a playlist original.
For generations, they have been the two biggest names in terror. He may get the blood, but I'll get the glory.
Freddy's coming back.
And this summer, for the first time ever, she's mine! Two legends will come together.
It's time to put this bad dog to sleep. Of course!
Freddy vs. Jason. Winner kills all. Rated R.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. Yet another anniversary episode.
Yes, and even though it's not officially our kickoff to spooky season, it kind of feels that way considering the movie that we're covering. And we're rolling into September here, which over here on the podcast will very much be horror-centric until Halloween. But this is our last anniversary from August to cover, and super excited to chat about this one. This is a movie I remember very much from back in the day in my childhood, and had not seen in a very, very long time. So excited to get into the nitty gritty of Freddy versus Jason today. What a bonkers watch.
It was, pretty bonkers too. I hadn't watched it in a really long time, but it immediately took me back to when I first saw it and just how insanely fun it is. And so over the top and ridiculous, but it wears all of that proudly. Very much so. Honestly. So it was a really fun rewatch to get into. So it should be a fun discussion. And you're right, and it does feel like the kickoff to spooky season. You know, other than the OC, which we did last week, I think the last anniversary one we did was Halloween H2O. So that was another movie.
There you go.
So it feels like we unofficially kicked it off, but we'll talk a little bit about what's coming a little bit with that at the end here. This is like a nice little precursor to that. And a movie that's not, of course, not scary in the slightest, but still fun. So still a fun horror movie to get into. But before we get into the anniversaries, much like we did with the OC, there are a couple of news things that we have to jump into.
Of course.
There's not a lot. I'm low. Yeah, I know. I'm actually low key happy there's not like a ton of news because it makes me feel good about like dedicating so much to the horror movie stuff the next 2 months. Because
I think that might work out in our favor.
Yeah, if that's how things are gonna be, then like we can just kind of give you a little bit of news and then focus on something else. Sadly, the first bit of news is something we heard that might happen, and we were hoping that it wouldn't happen. And then it did, and it just makes me more mad at the studios who think that delaying their movies is more cost effective than just paying their writers and actors what they're actually worth. But I think you've, between the crossover or spinoff, whatever, for Back to the Blockbuster and this show, for myself, Jackson, Owen, we've all said at different occasions that Dune Part 2 is one of our most anticipated movies of 2023, and now it will have to be one of our most anticipated movies of 2024 because Warner Brothers officially delayed it until March 15th, 2024.
Yes.
And guys, Zendaya fans keeping points at home. That's two of her movies that got delayed because due to the strike. The only like potential upside to this next year is that she'll have two movies out within a month of each other in 2024.
That's
so
right.
It'll be good for her. She'll be huge, but other than that, it's pretty shitty news. I think it's interesting that Warner Brothers announced delaying this, but they kept Aquaman 2 in December. So far, The Color Purple Broadway musical adaptation is still December, and Wonka is still in December. They didn't announce moving them out of their release dates.
Well,
I don't know.
I guess because Dune was slated for early November, right? Or was it still? I've been struggling.
I think
to
November
remember
3rd.
Yeah, okay, you're right. But for some reason, I think maybe because the first one came out in October, I was expecting it was an October release as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if strikes are going on in another month or two that we will see those pushed. Although I hope they just keep Aquaman where it's at so that we can just get through this finale of the DCU.
Because I feel like it's gonna die wherever it's at.
Like it's not really gonna matter. Like just keep it there. But I can imagine them delaying those other two just to enhance what they feel like will be better box office performance. But you're right, it all comes down to this very poor decision making over delaying your movies versus paying your actors and writers fair wages. just another battle in the saga of the strike. Really hoping that it pays off. Although I was looking to pick your brain. I look at it, this strike, and there may be another perspective I haven't considered yet. Or not strike, sorry, delay of Dune in two ways. One being good for, hurting or helping the movie. This movie doesn't feel like a March release to me. It feels very much like a fall release right there for award season. How do you feel this time, like March 15th, will affect, or do you think it even will have an effect on it?
I still think, despite being released earlier in the year next year, that it can still be an awards contender, especially if it's really good. I think that Warner Brothers, if they do it right, so by the time it has a theatrical run, and then I'm guessing by the summer, maybe earlier, it would be on video on demand, and then like HBO Max, and then they can and then Blu-ray, they can kind of remarket it and reignite an Oscar campaign later in the year.
That's a good point.
It's this is good news for? It's good news for Oppenheimer, because that takes out one major technical achievement.
There you go. I hadn't even thought about that.
That would be a lot of categories. A lot of categories. So like Oppenheimer's Oscar chances in a lot of key categories just like went through the roof.
That's a fantastic point.
Because I know we got a few awards contenders still yet to be released. Hopefully they don't get delayed too. But Oppenheimer has like the critical love, it has the financial box office love,
it has everything going for it.
It's a huge technical achievement as well. Maybe this is like Christopher Nolan, getting an Oscar. That would be that'd be sick.
That would be incredible.
That was one of the first things I thought. I was like, well, I mean, this is bad news for us, but like probably really good news for Universal Pictures and Oppenheimer and the whole team on that, because that would have been like one of the bigger like technical movies as far as like visual effects and sound design.
They'd be battling it out for a lot of those technical Oscars without a doubt.
Yeah. I don't have the full list in front of me. The way the March release schedule looks now, because everything's been delayed and moved around so much, March is going to be a stacked month of movies. I don't know if those movies are going to stay there, because like a lot of them are coming out within like a week of each other, and it reminded me of COVID all over again, where it felt like studios were just like moving their films all willy-nilly and not looking at the whole calendar, being like, oh shit, like we're opening against this. That's what, and you know what, poor fucking Dune. I mean, I know they want to do a third film, and the director talked about it, but it seems like someone made a good point on Twitter, like the first movie was going to come out in December, it got hit by COVID, and then it got delayed. This one gets delayed by the strike, so I don't even know what bad juju a third film could bring.
Oh god, I don't want to think about it, but you're right. Hopefully, this isn't precedent setting. If twice is a coincidence, three is a trend. So hopefully, that's not the case. But until you brought up those points, so I was a little bit, because this is how my brain works. I go to the worst possible scenario, but I was a little bit worried that this movie might run out of steam by Oscar season. Not that it wouldn't be considered for any, but like and I guess Everything Everywhere, this year's Best Picture winner kind of did break that mold of, it was a February, March release. So, it's possible, but I was a little bit concerned that, there's still 9 months in the year after Dune 2 will come out, if it maintains its current release slot. But it gives a lot of other films, especially the ones right around awards season, the chance to shine near the end of the year. And I definitely believe in the phenomenon of the proximity of your movie's release, impacting awards consideration. So I'm a little worried, but I feel a little bit better having asked you, which is why I was saving it for us to mention
for this.
But I don't like a Dune in March. So it just does not feel right at all.
It doesn't scream March. I mean, I'm guessing they have to look at the release schedule and be like, okay, this is the best possible spot considering what else is.
I'm glad it's not a year delay. Like that would have sucked.
That would have been brutal.
Yeah.
And there are rumors, they are not like officially confirmed, but Dune leaving that release date left IMAX screens open that they think the Marvels might take if it doesn't get delayed. So I guess that's good news for Marvel if they want to take those IMAX screens.
Any idea how that changes the economics of that movie? Does that make that movie more expensive, or does that not really have any impact?
That's why so many people that are complaining about this and saying how greedy the studios are. The fact that you're wasting, like when you delay a movie, there's not leftover like marketing dollars. We're like, oh, like we pause like marketing. Let's restart in like January to get ready for our March. They have to like redo it. They have to buy more TV spots. They have to buy like they're spending so much more money cutting new trailers together, doing all this stuff to re-promote it. So you're wasting money. I hadn't thought about that either. You're losing money. Gosh. I mean, I don't know. It's a really and I thought it was so crazy that this got announced. Like, I think it was 1 or 2 days before Empire magazine had a big cover layout for Dune Part 2 that still got released to promote the movie.
That's right.
And I was like, well, perfect timing, Warner Brothers. Yeah, you guys suck. And I also want to say that because of that delay, the Godzilla Kong, the new Empire movie, got moved 1 month to April 12th because that was in the March 15th spot that Dune is now taking. And then they also there's a Lord of the Rings like animated movie, The War.
Yes.
That was supposed to come out on April 12th, where Godzilla now is. It's going to open on December 13th, 2024 as well.
Oh my God. Wow. Big delay.
But I mean, I guess that's usually that was like the sweet spot for Lord of the Rings related movies, like the December release calendar. So that might be better. I think this is the biggest casualty of the strike as far as delays. I know Kraven the Hunter got delayed and Ghostbusters Afterlife, that sequel, got delayed, but I feel like this is like the bigger one of the
unequivocally bunch. If you ask me, definitely the biggest gut punch so far. Yeah, I feel like there's still might be more to come, but
I was not too happy when I got that email. It was like, I'm like, damn it. Like,
it was a Friday, right? I was at a festival for
you were blissful and like they probably didn't even know for a little bit.
It was somewhere absolutely. I think it was around 8 p.m. I was just looking at my like receipts here when I messaged the guys when I saw it was delayed, and I was like pretty in one at this festival when I saw that. I was like, oh man, that's not, it ruined my vibe there. I did not want to see that. Yeah. I kind of in the back of my heart of hearts, I felt like I know that was coming, or at least there was a potential for Dune to be delayed, but seeing it definitely brought that pain to the forefront, and I tried to forget about it immediately after, but it's unavoidable now. So what is that? So I guess, it's only like a 4.5 month delay.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be here before we know it. It's just, I was so looking forward to it. I mean, I just saw that trailer again when we went to go see what did we see before? Not Strays. I did see that actually.
Was it Blue Beetle?
The trailer was attached to that. Blue Beetle. Yeah. So it was attached to that because we saw Blue Beetle. We saw Blue Beetle in IMAX. So they were really, like pumping the whole like IMAX Dune Part 2 thing. And I was like, oh, this is like really exciting. But even my brother like leaned over and whispered to me, he's like, you think it's gonna come out? And I was like, I hope so. And then of course, not so much anymore. But yeah, he'll be here before we know it, and I still think its Oscar chances are pretty high, unless the movie is like awful, which I doubt.
No, I'm sure it'll be fantastic, but I'm curious. I haven't really done a lot of looking at 2024's
what calendar. What it'll be. I don't know about that either. Actually, yeah, that's a good point too. Hopefully, it still can fit in if they decide to nominate 10 movies. It'll get in there, but yeah. I mean, not the best news for us to tell you. As far as the strike, no new things to really report, except that the writers and the people representing the studios met a few times, and nothing got resolved. And I think one of the last times,
right?
I guess one of the last times was Bob Iger and David Zaslav was at one of these what they call negotiations, and the people involved at the WGA was like, it was not a negotiation. It felt more like a shakedown. Negotiation, and they were like, no, that's not how this is going to work. It was almost like, hey, do what needs to be done to end this, like take whatever deal, like this new deal is like a sweet deal, let's take it, and more power to them for not taking it. So I mean, this sucks for us as consumers, but I mean, it's in the long run this will be more beneficial for them. And then I mean, it's crazy that SAG is like, we're ready to go to the negotiating table, and they haven't even met with them. So they haven't even negotiated with SAG at all. So like, and I guess they said, we saw how this all played out in the news with the WGA the last week. And SAG was like, we know they're not ready to talk to us based on how they were handling things with them, thinking that they were offering them something like, oh, like we're finally coming to the table on this. I could imagine being in a room and realizing like, why are these two guys here? and then realizing why they're there. To basically pressure you into taking the deal that you don't want to take.
Yeah, you're right though. All the power to them for staying strong, not folding under what must be insurmountable pressure from all sorts of different parties. So yeah, just really hoping they still hold out. I still am a strong believer that the studios are going to be putting up this strong front until the final moments when they really are not going to have a chance to anymore. I just hope that you know the writers and actors unions hold out long enough. It's still anyone's game, it seems like at this point, but God, yeah, it's dragging on. It's honestly, it's kind of cool, as annoying and tragic and just crappy overall it is. It's cool to be living through what will like undoubtedly be movie history.
I mean, if it changes
industry history,
if it moves the needle in like a really positive way, like they're hoping. I mean, the vibe I'm getting from reading everything that different writers are putting on social media, different actors who are involved in SAG, and everyone that supports the strike is that they are not going to cave to just any kind of deal. They said, because they were like, if we cave to something that they're offering that seems like it sounds better to the casual person on paper, they were like, we'll be striking again in 2026. So like, why not just get this all resolved now, so we don't have to do this again anytime soon? And so I see that point. So like, yeah, don't take some weird, sweetheart deal now, only to have to do this 3 years later again. So there like, take the deal that is right.
Save everybody in the long run.
And I know some actors I've seen on Twitter where some actors they're taking, like, I hate to say regular jobs, but they are now. Like some of them are like bartending, serving. Yeah. They have to. Same with writers. So I mean, but they're like willing to do that because they're like, hey, this is what's right at the end of the day. So I fully support that. I know it has to be a pain in the ass. To go through all this. Right. But like you said, I think in the end it will be kind of industry history if they get. I won't say when they get the deal.
When
like they
that's
deserve,
right.
That it will be a really big moment as far because you're seeing it too. A lot of like different parts of the industry are trying to unionize now. Like a lot of the special effects artists and houses are trying to do it. Like they feel like they've been kind of. It seems like this movement here has kind of caused other divisions of the industry to be like, hey, like we're not being treated fairly either. Let's figure out how to be better. And so there's a lot that it's like kind of branching off and kind of. And I mean, I'm not a huge proponent of reality TV, but even some of those people are trying to form their own, like, because they like it's the same like reality TV stars. They are on their stuff airs via streaming on TV. They don't really residuals I don't think get any as far as it comes to like their stuff airing over and over again.
Interesting.
Of course these are regular people. They're not actors, whatever, but it's still a job. I mean, it's still something that they're doing. Putting themselves out there for the sake of network entertainment. I know it's not really considered like highbrow entertainment, but it's still it's still work. And a lot of people can't put themselves out there to like look ridiculous on shows like that. And these people are willing to do that.
It's its own sort of art.
and in a lot of ways, maybe a little harder because like you're putting yourself. And you're not playing a part. I mean, maybe you're playing like an exaggerated version of like, maybe you're not quite the bitch, and you're kind of pushing that narrative for TV, but it's still you, and that's what people see. They're like, this is like who you are in real life, and in some ways that might be a little harder to do than as far as just the general reaction from people watching and having them kind of judge your every. Now they all sign up for that. I'm not saying don't cry for them. They know what they're doing, but it's probably not easy either. So I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's kind of cool they're getting this whole groundswell of like different parts of the industry, trying to get what's fair for them. So kudos to them.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, and I think they deserve it. Also usually we do box office at the end. We will do the predictions at the end, but this week's box office has like an interesting story tied into it. So by the way, I'm gonna say this: I saw Gran Turismo and I loved it. I didn't think I was gonna love it. I had like really low expectations and came out of it feeling like I also want to race cars. It was. I mean, it really is. Everyone there's been a lot of comparisons to the Karate Kid, and like there is a true underdog story it's just really well done, and the fact that story is true like blows my mind totally considerably. Before I went to go see it Thursday, I was very worried about the runtime. I was like, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's long for something like this, but it pumps you up so much that you don't care Like it's just like you're rooting for this guy from start to finish, even though you already know the outcome because the real guy is very successful. He also did his own stunt driving for the movie too. Which is kind of cool. So I was very, I was rooting for the movie to do well. It reminded me of it being in a Blue Beetle situation where like, hey, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I don't know what the opening weekend is. I know I predicted it low at 16. I forgot what you gave it, but I know I said 16 million. And I was relatively close. The movie ended up opening to $17.4 million. Okay,
I went with 19. Movies, so
we're both kind of close. We're both kind of close either direction. Yeah. And it got an A cinema score from opening day audiences. That's a really good score for a movie like that. Which kind of I think a lot of people think that word of mouth is going to be big on this. Whenever we get something wrong, I will correct ourselves. There was a site that said this was a $100 million movie. It actually is very much lower than that at 60 million. So it's in a really good spot.
Oh wow.
Budget wise too. It's already made $53.8 million worldwide. Because it opened early overseas, but it also kind of opened early in LA for 2 special pre-show screenings 2 weeks before the movie opened. This was done because the actors can't promote the film because of the strike. So like the idea from Sony was like, we're going to have these pre-show screenings and they're going to lift kind of the social media embargo so that fans can go online and be like, hey, this movie is legit. It's good. Kind of create its own, let the fans promote the movie.
Sony, honestly, working with what they got.
So the $17.4 million opening weekend includes $3.9 million of pre-show screenings from the last 2 weeks. Now it also includes $1.4 million from Thursday preview numbers, but every studio knows that number is rolled into the weekend total, so they don't care. They never dispute the Thursday previews. Well, Warner Brothers had something to say because Barbie in its 6th weekend made $15.1 million. It's fine. It's still making a lot of money.
Yes.
But if you took out the $3.9 million that was made for Gran Turismo in those pre-show screenings, I think it has like a $13.4 million opening weekend. And then Barbie is number 1 in weekend 6. So Warner Brothers took Sony to task over this. Said that's not a true opening weekend figure. They're not the first studio to do this. Dungeons and Dragons
did it.
They did it. Now their excuse is they did it during the pandemic. It was a much different time, but they did it during the release for Tenet. There were 11 pre-show screenings, and they put the grosses from that into the $20 million opening weekend that Tenet had in a much darker time for moviegoing.
Certainly, yes.
And then Paramount did it with Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. The $37.2 million opening included $5.6 million made a week prior during special pre-show screenings. All the other studios aren't complaining about it. They're like, hey, I mean, other studios have done it. It's whatever.
Right.
Warner Brothers thinks it's kind of shady that, because it's not a true opening weekend figure with that number included in there. But what do you think? Is it fair? Is it kind of like Warner Brothers get over it? Your movie's already made a lot of money.
Yeah, I certainly feel that way. Although like this is one of those rare cases. Well, no, I generally like to see both sides of things when there can be an argument made. I get why Warner Brothers inevitably wants to preserve like because what Barbie is doing right now, it's going to be part of that movie's legacy. How many weekends it reigned at the box office, and so far, it was 4 in a row. Is that right? Until Blue Beetle dethroned it in the 5th.
Until Blue Beetle did.
So to be able to say that in its first 6 weeks of the box office, it reigned number 1 during 5 of those. Like I get why they'd want to preserve that, but where I think that argument really loses some snuff is the fact that they did it with Tenet, and I had been following your posts on your socials earlier where I was like catching up on that. And when I'd seen that, granted, I'm not sure, like, do you have any sense of the totals from those 11 pre-shows that they...
I don't. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find the exact totals. I know that the studios were being really close to the chest about like those numbers then, because like, so many movie theaters were closed and like I know a lot of studios stopped reporting numbers during that time. I tried to look it up, so I couldn't find the exact figure.
In any case, it doesn't even really matter for like my opinion. Like the fact that they have done it, there's clearly a precedent set for this being done before and it not really getting much backlash. I think that I agree, like in the sense that it's not a true opening weekend numbers, but I feel like for it to claim number one at the box office for this weekend, including that 3 point however many million, I don't really see it why they're that worked up about it. Their movie's already reached Barbie's at 1.7 billion now worldwide. Is it reached there?
It's 1.34 right now.
A little lower than I thought.
It actually is it tops Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 to become Warner Brothers' biggest global movie ever. It also is the highest grossing film domestically of the year, topping the Super Mario Brothers movie. That's still strange to me that was
I know.
movie.
Only two $1 billion movies at the box office at the 8th month of the year. I find very
crazy.
Odd. Yeah, a lot of underperformers this year. I don't quite think that meets that narrative that the movies aren't fully back. I think we still are, pretty much close to what we were pre-pandemic. I mean, there's probably an argument to be made for both there too. But anyway, bottom line, I think it's, I think Warner Brothers is just kind of like making something out of not much really. So I say all the power to Gran Turismo. That's a movie that more needs that support right now than Barbie does.
It really does. And like, it needs that kind of like, I mean, even though like just reading that figure, like in a headline, like say like you're the number one movie in America, I think it does help a movie like Gran Turismo, and whoever might have been on the fence about seeing it might be like, oh, well, I mean, it did pretty well, so maybe it was worth checking out. And the exit polling for the movie is so great. I mean, I don't know if it's still at this, but when I saw it on opening on that Thursday, it had a 99% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Wow. The actual Rotten Tomatoes score is a little lower. I mean, I think it was 60% fresh when I looked last week. I don't know if it's still there.
Okay.
61% now. It's on the low end of fresh for critics, but yeah, it's a 98% audience score, and so it hasn't really moved much there. And that's
okay.
So word of mouth, I think, will be solid for the movie moving forward. And like you said, I think this movie needs that headline more than Barbie does. I mean, Barbie is fine.
Well, yeah, maybe I'm thinking Warner Brothers as a studio maybe could use maybe some more of those dollars considering the year that they had. Maybe they're just a little pinching their pockets still and want that accolade. I don't know. But I mean, all the power to Gran Turismo. I definitely plan on seeing it as well. And it looks fantastic as a longtime Nissan driver too. I'm pretty pumped to go see those cars in action.
And like this episode isn't about promoting that movie, but what really impressed me is that it seemed like a lot of that stuff done in that movie was practical. I couldn't really tell. There were some cool, really fun like special effect shots where they have him playing the game in his room, and they kind of do a really cool. I mean, you see in the trailer like a really cool like visual effect.
Car simulates over him.
Yeah. And I thought that was really cool, but for the most part, it looked like most of the main stuff was practical. So that made it really exciting to watch. And also too, I want to. A lot of movies got a big boost from National Cinema Day on Sunday, which is when they were offering discounted tickets for $4 at a lot of locations.
Right.
They said that it did 8.5 million admissions, which is up 5% from last year's.
Nice.
8.1 million admissions. They think that is a total of around $34 million for that day alone on Sunday. And just to show how like powerful that day actually was. Usually Saturday to Sunday, there's a decline and for your movie. Yeah, usually Saturday is like the bigger day, depending on if it's front loaded or not.
Okay.
But Barbie did $5.7 million on Sunday. It was up 6% from Saturday. Gran Turismo was up 15% on Sunday to 4.7 million. Most of the movies in the top 10 had really low percentage drops, and that had to do a lot with I think that day on Sunday. People going to the movies and seeing really cheap movies for $4. It was any format. You go see an IMAX movie for $4. Had a lot of participating.
Wow.
Blue Beetle had the biggest drop of the bunch. It was 49%, but it still kept it below 50, 60, which I thought was going to happen. So that is kind of small good news for that. But Oppenheimer only dropped 23.4%. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles only dropped 14.6%. Meg 2 The Trench only dropped 24.6%. So a lot of these movies held pretty decently considering, and I think that was because of that day. So I think that helped a lot, and I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing that again next year. Them doing this. So yeah, I think,
certainly.
And this all started because they were trying to get people to go back to the movies again last year after the pandemic, and last year there weren't a ton of offerings to. They did it because like there was nothing really out, so let's get people out there to go see what is out there. But this year, you had like a bunch of movies that are big, and they benefited from being bigger because of that day. So yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I think when you even discounting tickets that much, I still think you're making a pretty decent profit if you're a movie theater on a day like that. So
certainly seems like it has a bigger impact and drawback. So that's awesome. I'm not even sure. Is that only an American sort of celebration? I wasn't at the theaters this weekend.
Well,
I didn't know if that's celebrated
it said that I thought it was everywhere. I mean, it might have been in Canada too. I would have assumed that it was done there too. So yeah, I think I mean your country music and up. So you
that's
really,
right.
you didn't get, but I think it was out there as well.
Okay.
For them. And and I can't stop talking about box office without talking about your favorite movie of the year too.
Oppenheimer?
So far? Yeah.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
What about
it? I think by the end of today we'll pass Inception at the domestic box office, crossing $300 million domestically. It's also made $777.9 million worldwide. A lot of people think that it has enough gas in the tank to make it to 930, 950 worldwide.
Oh, wow.
And there are some people with even more bullish anticipations for it, thinking it could hit $1 billion. I don't think that's possible. But if it did, that'd be cool.
Stretch. Yeah. Oh, I want it to. I would be so thrilled for Nolan. Because he's directed $1 billion movies before, but I don't know that I think it has that much gas in the tank. However, I think that movie should be super proud for how much it is reined in. That is incredible.
Yeah, $300 million and counting. That's at the domestic
awesome.
box office. That's crazy. So yeah, good for you. You had a good week, Oppenheimer. You got Dune out of the way. Now you might actually win some big awards. So
yeah, really hoping Nolan snags that directing Oscar this year. That would be fantastic. But I also you made a great point today on your socials. It's as of recording, it's David Fincher's 61st birthday, you said, and that guy needs an Oscar in his hands too. This could be a year
and he has a movie coming out, The Killer. They released the poster, and sometimes when you release the poster, that means a trailer is not too far behind. So please give us a trailer. That'd be really
very excited. I keep forgetting it's a Netflix movie. So
yeah. So I mean, I ranked him for his birthday on Letterboxd.
Saw that.
That was hard. But actually, the first four were hard because I even mentioned it's so close between what I put for those first four.
Yes,
that I could probably wake up tomorrow and switch them
for sure.
But
no, I liked your list. I had no major gripes with it. Although mine, the difference is I have Benjamin Button a little higher up there. Man, I love that movie to death.
Oh, I got shit. Favorites. Someone sent me on Twitter. Someone sent me a message. They were like, "I love this," but they were like, "But your make placement though, it's got me questioning your integrity."
I haven't seen it. I had it low.
It was near the end. Yeah. And by the way, the distance between Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Make, and Alien 3, it's not even close. It's not even it's just personal preference.
I think it's a shame that Alien 3 even is attributed to Fincher because it's so much not his movie. But oh my god,
it almost made him not want to make films after that.
Yeah, could you imagine?
He was a music video director. He directed commercials, and he gets this big studio movie, and then the studio interferes all over it, and it turns into a mess. And it almost made him not want to continue being a filmmaker.
Scary world that would be
to think that we would have no of those classics from him is crazy to think. Also, I love people. I mean, I would people were talking about where I put Mank. I saw 7 really low on some people's lists.
Oh man, I loved where you had 7 on yours.
Blew my mind. But I also loved even people who weren't ranking movies who just decided to post one movie. There was a ton of love for Zodiac being either it's his most underrated movie or some people think that it's his best movie that doesn't get enough attention. Okay. I love Zodiac.
Yep.
So I loved seeing that as well. I was actually surprised Gone Girl was so high on some people's lists. I mean, I like it too, but I saw people that had it number 1, number 2 on their list. I mean, to each their own, but I was really surprised by that.
I'm a big Gone Girl fan. I remember that was a very interesting theatrical experience for me. I saw it with my mom, who's very squeamish on certain things. So like when that throat slit scene happened, oh my gosh, she was mortified. I was sitting right next to her. I was like 16 watching that scene next to her. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. However, that was right at the cusp of me like kind of like falling in love with cinema, and that movie I was huge on for years, and I still am, but due for a rewatch for sure. But I'd have that high on my Fincher list too. I love Gone Girl. Got a special spot in my heart for it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
So I guess now we go from talking about auteur filmmaking and
to not exactly so much. But
we're joking. This is a really fun movie.
Oh yeah.
Of course, we're doing today's anniversary is for Freddy versus Jason, which opened on August 15th, 2003, 20 years ago. It was directed by Ronny Yu and written by Damian, Shannon, and Mark Swift. After passing through a lot of other writers, you mentioned the number. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it is a crossover between the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th franchises, being the 8th installment in the former and the 11th in the latter. The film joins the two series in a shared universe and pits their respective antagonists, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, against each other. Freddy is weakened and forgotten because the citizens of his hometown Springwood have defeated him by using medications that repress dreams. Freddy awakens Jason to stir up fear and grow his power so that he may return and kill again. Jason turns out to not be as easily controlled as Freddy initially thought, and the two supernatural mass murderers come into conflict. In addition to Robert Englund and Ken Kirzinger, who plays Jason, the movie also stars as our human characters. Whether or not you care about them, we'll get into that too. Monica Keena, Jason Ritter, Kelly Rowland, Chris Marquette, Lachlan Monroe, Kyle Labine also star in the movie. When it came out, it made $160 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing film in each series at the time. Oddly enough, it's also the last time Robert Englund has played the role of Freddy Krueger on the big screen.
Surprised to see that.
And in the wake of his success, there was a lot of, Evil Dead, Ash versus Freddy versus Jason kind of things that got brought up. And then also, Pinhead versus Michael Myers versus Freddy. A lot of other ones that kind of got thrown around after this film was successful. But crazy that even though this movie made a ton of money, we didn't get anything from these two franchises again until they were respectively rebooted. And that has so far
year, wasn't it?
So within a year, so 2009 for Friday the 13th and 2010 for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, right. I always forget it was 2010. Yeah.
And the last time we've actually seen both of those movies, both of those characters on the big screen, which, I saw a lot of people. I wrote something for MovieWeb. A lot of people talked about how, like, it, looking back on how fun this movie was and how much of an event it was, it's crazy that these two very, heavyweights of the horror genre have not been on the big screen in a really long time, all things considered. And people revisiting this movie made them kind of wish that, one of these franchises maybe gets like the Halloween treatment, like bring it back in a big way. Whatever you think about David Gordon Green in that trilogy, it made Michael Myers relevant again for a whole new generation of horror movie fans. So, and they were all successful, at least financially. So I feel like Freddy and Jason deserve their turn, but until then we can go back 20 years and
that's right.
Look back at this one. So when did you first discover this cinematic masterpiece?
Well, this was one of those many movies that, like, in my adolescence, I remember the song, like Freddy's like song. I'm not gonna, for the sake of our listeners, I will not give my rendition of it, but those that know the 1 2 the counting song, that was just like when I was growing up, like horror stories and movies, like that was what everyone's like, older siblings would tell them to scare them, and then we would always like share these stories at like daycare or school and whatnot. So I was like familiar with Freddy much more than like Jason growing up. Why that was, I'm not even sure, but I had like seen this probably somewhere where I shouldn't have, way back before I really had any sort of like memory development. So like there was, watching this last night, I was like, I can vaguely remember scenes of this movie from way back when. I don't even remember. So hard to put a year on when I had first seen it, but definitely at some point when I was probably like somewhere between like 6 and 8 years old. Hadn't revisited it, I don't think, since. So I'd really say like my first actual experience would have been yesterday, but there were some really memorable scenes that stuck out from deep in my subconscious that were really cool to see again.
Yeah.
But it was a thrill ride. I think it's a little better than the 37 Metascore that it has, but I can only imagine what the reception at the time this movie came out would have been like. I would have liked to have experienced it as an adult, as a horror fan when it came out. But I was really curious about your experience with it. If this is one that you caught in theaters, if it even had a theatrical. As you mentioned, it did.
It did. Yeah. So
I wasn't sure though.
This is where I aged myself. So I did see it in theaters on opening weekend. The fun thing about this movie is that we went with a big group, and a lot of people that went with us, this is mostly the girls that went with us. This is how big it was and how fun it seemed to them. They were not entirely fans of A Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. They didn't really see a lot of them, but they were like, this looks fun. We'll go with you guys to go see it. And so it was an event for all of us that loved horror movies, and we actually got convinced people who didn't really know anything about these two characters to go see the movie on opening night.
That would be a weird experience, not being familiar with it either, and be like, who the hell are these guys? Yeah.
And I think the movie does a decent job of giving you a little backstory on both to kind of like, all right, I kind of understand what, at least what the rules are as for these two characters.
Right.
And legit, I think it was like 13 or 15 of us that went to go see it on opening night. And it was a packed theater, and it was one of those like rowdy, very fun.
See, that would make this experience a lot of fun. Yeah.
I think there was like they have that first fight in like the boiler room, which is like a really short one. But even that fight, everyone was like, they were like ready for it.
Yeah.
Like even though like, of course it's not the big grudge match until the end. I do remember some, and we can talk about that a little bit, some complaining walking out that the fighting didn't start early enough, that there was like too much plot to get them to that point. And we had to kind of deal with like, in these versus movies, a lot of people don't really care about the regular people. They just care about the two people that are going to like go at it.
Yes.
And there could be a debate there. Like, I don't know how much you care about, the human characters in this and, their story. But I even watching it for this, I didn't think it really overtook it. I thought it was just,
I didn't think so.
I thought it was just enough, and it worked. And I don't know, it was a really fun time at the movies. It was also really fun because, Friday the 13th was coming off of Jason X, which flops. And A Nightmare on Elm Street 1994, even though Wes Craven's New Nightmare is very well received critically, it doesn't make a lot of money. I think it's respected now as far as like one of the better ones. But two franchises that were kind of like dead at the time. And then you had them both, they got like a shot of adrenaline when this movie came out.
Yeah.
A $36 million opening weekend. It was number one for 2 weeks in a row. I think it helped. The August release date helped because it's like, it's kind of like the late summer. It feels like it might be a dumping ground, but I think it works for horror movies sometimes. When you release
exactly. When there's not much competition, definitely.
Right. And I got the impression that for the most part, people enjoyed it because this was in development for so long. And it's just like, even watching it now, it's like, what else could we have gotten that would have worked? Like, it works as well as it could.
Right.
And I think it does a good job of making things, especially about who wins, pretty ambiguous about like, who do you think actually wins that fight?
Right.
There are going to be fans of either one that think it's a definitive answer. And then some are like, no, they ended in a way where it seems like there's no real winner.
Right.
But that was like a very hotly debated thing after we saw the movie, like going back and forth about like, well, I think he won. Like, no, I think he won. Like, no, it's a draw. Like, it was like that kind of silly discussion. But yeah, that was what I got from it. I was like, I don't agree with like you said, 37 Metascore, and I think it's like it's 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, if you're a critic, if you're a critic going into this, I feel you'd be like, yo, this is not going to be The Godfather. It's
its cinematic merits are few and far between, but I think it's a purely entertainment value sort of popcorn movie. And that being said, for either fan of either franchise, I think that there is a lot of fan service done in this movie that I thought was super entertaining, even though I don't necessarily resonate with either series that much, as I feel, people that grew up watching them. I am a big fan of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, like just as a horror movie, one of my favorites. And I like the character of Jason, but I haven't really liked many of the movies I've seen him in, but I've always liked his presence. But yeah, no, there's a lot of fun stuff to see. I really thought well, just jumping in before I get into like what I think of how it was set up, hearing Jason's theme on Elm Street as the
Elm Street theme.
Oh, that was so cool to hear.
The New Line Cinema logo.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was
cool.
I can only imagine for like fans of either franchise seeing that come out. That must have been like just such a surreal experience.
Cheers at the beginning. Yeah, it was like immediate. Like
definitely.
I do remember that. Yeah.
About those concerns about how much plot there is before the fight, I thought, to the movie's credit, because there are definitely moments in this movie I'm like, this is beyond camp and cheese and like, but it's in good fun. But I thought the setup and actually the plot to pit these characters against each other was actually pretty well done. The fact of like Freddy using Jason as his kind of puppet to inspire the people on Elm Street to be afraid of him again was like honestly super well thought out. And then him inevitably not being able to be controlled, leading them to battle each other, like that is, for what this movie is, I'd hesitate to use the word smart, but I don't have a better word for it. So I thought that was cool. And I feel like you needed plot to get through to that battle instead of like, I don't know what their motivation for being pitted against each other would have been in the first hour of this movie. Hard to imagine. But as we mentioned earlier, there's at one point 17 different scripts for this movie had been pitched. There must have been no shortage of ideas about these characters. I'd be curious to read a couple of those and see how insane they would have been. But I feel like what they settled on, without its flaws, was pretty solid.
Yeah, I think the script that we ultimately got from Damian, Shannon, and Mark Swift is the best we could have. I mean, horror fans, if you're listening and disagree, like we could probably put a poll up or something. That I don't know what else you could have gotten that would have been better. This made the most sense to me. Combined to get them in the same, because there was always that kind of issue of like, all right, Freddy's in the dream world and Jason is, despite being kind of an undead, I guess, zombie at this point, is in the real world. So how do you make that happen and make that work? And I thought that was the best possible outcome. To use kind of Jason as like this kind of vessel to get Freddy to make people afraid of Freddy again, like where they don't know it's Jason, they assume that it might be Freddy because of what Springwood has seen like in years past, and they think these are very similar to those like past murders and stuff. So I thought that was actually, I'll call it smart. I think it was a smart idea to put that together. I mean, I think it's the best we could have gotten from combining both franchises. I also think that this was hard to put together because Friday the 13th was at Paramount Pictures back in the day, and this was in development since like the late 80s. So I think around 1987 when they were doing Friday the 13th, A New Blood, and that's like oddly enough the first Friday the 13th with Kane Hodder. We can kind of talk about what happened with him in this movie. Yes, because he was pretty butthurt for years over it.
Yeah, I imagine he was a fan favorite.
Yeah, and New Line and Paramount Pictures were interested in it, but it was all these logistical issues because they were in two different studios. So it's like it was hard to combine them. But eventually, Jason ended up at the house that Freddy built because that's what they call New Line Cinema, because I Nightmare on Elm Street was their first big hit.
Okay.
With Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday, it ends up at Jason ends up at New Line, and they tease this whole thing at the end of that movie with like Freddy's glove coming out of the ground and like snatching down.
Which is what year was that?
So that's 94, I believe, is when Jason goes. No, 93. So I actually came out 93. Jason Goes to Hell.
A whole decade of waiting for that crossover.
A whole decade.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
I knew that tease, but didn't know what movie it was from. Right.
And like we said, New Line spent $6 million on script development alone, which is why there were a plethora of writers that went through this. Some writers that were attached to Alien vs. Predator took a swing at it.
Okay.
New Line offered a spot to Guillermo del Toro and Peter Jackson to either write and direct, and they both kind of opted out, which would have been very interesting.
Holy.
I mean, I think it would have been cool. But David S. Goyer also kind of worked on the treatment as well. A lot of different people. Jason X writer Todd Farmer wrote for it. Some other notable names too. Rob Zombie almost was involved at one point.
Yes, that's right. He did House of a Thousand Corpses instead. Yes.
Yeah.
Good choice.
So this went through so many different people. But that's how important it was for them to get it done. And I guess get it done right, as right could be. And once they finally nailed down the scripts and they were like, all right, well, Robert Englund, of course, is going to do it. He's our Freddy.
Right.
And I don't even know if he thought that would be his last hurrah as Freddy, but I guess it kind of, in its own way, feels like it's a good one because it's like, all right, this thing that we were like in development on for years, we finally got to do it, and it made both franchises successful again. And I guess that is a good kind of final bow for him if if that is really it. He's definitely said he doesn't think he can do it anymore.
No,
he's a lot older now.
Yeah.
But he was always involved. Kane Hodder he thought they are friends in real life, like really good friends, and they've been talking about getting to do this together for years and years. So Kane Hodder has played him. He played Jason in Part 7, and then Jason Takes Manhattan, and then Freddy, and then in Jason Goes to Hell. He also played him in Jason X. He's the actor who's played him the most.
Right.
Yeah. And we brought this up on like another episode where most people would be like, well, why does it matter who's doing that part? Because it's a guy behind the mask and anyone can play that. But if you were to ask like a horror fan that loves Kane Hodder's Jason movies, they would tell you like, no, he moves this way, a certain way, and walks a certain way.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, so there's that.
You can tell
and
his
also,
size. He's 3 inches shorter than the guy that plays him in this movie, which I think was ultimately like part of the casting decision.
Another thing that kind of played into that. But Kane Hodder, in addition to being a fan favorite, loves the franchise and cares about the character and cares about his fans, and was just super excited to get to do it. There is a lot of debate over whose decision it was to go with Ken Kirzinger. He oddly enough had doubled for Kane Hodder. I think in part 8, I believe, and in Jason Takes Manhattan. So they are familiar with each other. Ronny Yu, who directed the movie, by the way, was chosen by New Line because of what a good job he did with Project Chucky. He actually brought that franchise back after it fell apart for a little bit. So which is why they picked Ronny Yu to direct this. Ronny Yu said it was a New Line decision to replace Kane Hodder, and he kind of went with that. Ronny Yu he said not too familiar with how popular Kane Hodder was in the role. He was just like, I got a message from the studio like, hey, we want someone new to play Jason, and that's kind of what he went with. Other people had said it was a Ronny Yu decision on his own,
right?
Kind of putting it on him, and then the studio, like you said, they were impressed with Ken's size, as he was tall. He was like, he's like you said, like 3 inches taller than Kane Hodder.
I think he was a whopping 6'5".
Yeah, they liked the way that Ken moved. And he also could do all the physical stuff because he's a stunt man too. So, it's unfortunate. I mean, up until recently, watching interviews with Kane Hodder talk about it, I think he's finally at a point where he's accepted it, and it was, it is what it is. It happened. He has no ill will towards Robert Englund for continuing to do the movie because they're, of course you're going to do it. He doesn't feel like Ken stepped in and stole a job. It was like it was offered to him. Yeah, but I think he kind of thought it was one of those deals, like this kind of unspoken thing that he would be able to play this part in this really big event for both franchises. And it's unfortunately that he didn't. And a lot of fans still think I think a lot of fans don't have a problem with like what Ken does as Jason. He physically, he fits the bill, and like I don't see anything wrong with what he does. I mean, like even though I can be a big supporter of like, hey, I believe Nick Castle walks a certain way as Michael Myers, I don't really feel that way about a lot of the Jasons, where it's like, all right, I mean, I guess anyone could do it, in my opinion. But
I agree. I think it comes down to the makeup department for Jason, and I think they did a great job in this movie.
But I also, I watched Kane Hodder's documentary about his life as a stunt performer and like what he's gone through, and then of course getting this franchise and what that meant to him. And I feel bad on that level. I mean, he really wanted to do it, and it was a big blow when he didn't get to. And I'm sure it was an even bigger blow to watch them promoting it. They did that whole cool, like fun weigh-in, like marketing thing. Like made it in Vegas. They made it like a whole like event. And then you see how much money the movie makes. And that has to sting a bit. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you like feel one way or the other, but do you think that like he got shafted, or was it just like, hey, they made a decision that they thought was better for
Well, yeah, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think their decision to cast somebody else did shaft Kane hotter. I mean, yeah, I understand. I think from what I read anyway, that there was a focus on, and this is the first movie where you're pitting Jason against another major horror icon. And so they want a big factor between them was the physical differences between them, and I get that was a factor going into that decision. I can't remember his name, and I don't want who the guy that portrays him in this movie. What his name is? Kim.
Oh, it's Ken. Yeah, Ken Kirzinger.
Kirzinger was 3 inches taller, just a little bit more physically imposing to Robert Englund, who I think was like 5'7" or 5'8" or something like that. Like, I get that side of things, but yeah, Kane had that 4 movies under his belt playing that character. I do not blame him one bit for being upset about that inevitable decision. So I think, I understand both sides without a doubt. I don't always like to play devil's advocate, but yeah, I understand completely in that side, and that definitely would suck. Did he ever get the chance to play Jason again?
No. So since then, I forgot who. I think Jason Mears is who plays him in the reboot. He's another stuntman. Mm-hmm. I know, and since then, it was that franchise up until recently was tied up in like legal stuff, which is finally over. But like, so no, Jason X was the last time he got to play him.
I agree. Like, actually, I want to go back to this point that you mentioned earlier about how we got one reboot movie for each of those characters and then nothing since. And this is 12 and 13 years ago now, or 13 and 14 years ago now. And I think that's crazy, but I honestly would like to see Rob Zombies like tackle maybe a Friday the 13th. I think he would have made a cool impression on that. It's scary for you to think about, though.
I know it is scary for me. And what's funny, on this day recording, it's Monday. You'll hear this on Thursday, but today is like the Halloween. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 came out 14 years ago today.
Oh wow!
And I am seeing some mad love for it on Twitter. I've never seen people talk about how much they love it, and I know maybe. I think you're one of the people that were like,
I like the first one, honestly.
And then like there are some people supporting part 2. Like, at least he tried something different. Like, I mean, all right, cool. I didn't like what he did with. I didn't like what he did with it. But I mean, which one would you want him to tackle? Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th?
Oh, I don't think he's suited to do Nightmare, but I think he can handle somebody as simple as Jason for sure, and just like how. I don't know. I'd like to see he's great with like gore and great effects and makeup, which would go well into like a Freddy movie, but I think he's just more suited to like a Jason movie, and maybe it would be kind of akin to his Halloween movie. Because honestly, when you think about it, Jason and Michael, other than like their backstories, maybe are similar in the sense of how they kill people. Yeah. So I think I would like to see that, but I think it's been enough time, or I wouldn't be opposed to a few more years, but I think we could see, for whatever reason, and more inclined to like support a revamp of Friday the 13th than Nightmare. That's because I think like you'd have to craft a little bit more of a complex, more intelligent Nightmare movie than you could do like a Friday the 13th movie. I think that wouldn't require as much. And I mean, it comes down to who you cast as Freddy. That's got to be bulletproof, and there's a lot of emotives going on. With that kind of character.
Robert Englund himself has he's been suggesting Kevin Bacon for like the last like.
Oh my God! What?
He
really. That's the first I've ever heard of that.
He thinks that he'd be a good choice. Why? And I don't know why. I mean, Kevin Bacon can act, but like, I mean, it's just
certainly.
I
love Kevin Bacon.
I didn't personally think of him as Freddy Krueger, but
not at all. That's why I was so surprised.
Oddly enough, personally, it's funny that Kevin Bacon's in Friday the 13th, which is kind of crazy. He's in the first one. Yeah,
I forgot about that. You're right. I loved the casting of Jackie Earle Haley in the remake, but I just don't think that movie worked. But
so on paper, it's good. I thought that was a good choice because this is like he was just coming off. I think in 2000. When did he get nominated for an Oscar? I think it was 2006, 2007, somewhere in there when he got nominated for Little Children. So he had like a bit of a career resurgence, and he's in Watchmen, and he's a good actor, right? So I was like, all right, that makes sense. But then just like the makeup effects were so wrong on him, it was just really bad.
Agreed.
Now, what's crazy about both reboots is they didn't flop. I mean, they weren't like Friday the 13th reboot made $92.7 million worldwide on a $19 million budget, and then Nightmare on Elm Street made 117 worldwide. Okay. It's just that they were so poorly received that it didn't feel like you could like sequelize them or to go like kind of branch off of those anymore.
Yeah, no, Rooney Mara has talked about how she wanted to quit acting.
Oh, she hated her experience on that.
She couldn't stand it, and I don't blame her.
And by the way, I hate to say this. I mean, I like Katie Cassidy. I got to meet her before. I love her on Arrow. Cool. But there was like a time when it's like, if she's in your horror movie remake, it's probably going to be bad. Because she was in When a Stranger Calls. She's in Black Christmas. And then she was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, my goodness.
They are the varying degrees of not great. So like she was Katie Cassidy was like horror movie reboot Kryptonite for a little bit. But yeah, they did well. They made their money, but they just weren't well received. I mean, I love the first 15 minutes of Friday the 13th, the 2009 movie. Yeah, that opening is sick. Like it's just
that's a different movie than what.
I was like, who made that tiny short film and then made this other thing?
Like, you're right. It really works. See, he's a monster in that movie. I really like just the dark, brooding atmosphere. That I love that you don't even get the title card until after that 15-minute opening is done. Yeah, and it's just like it's so good. Then the rest of the movie is just not. I was like, that's right.
Like that, and Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, even though it uses so many like effects to like kind of recreate certain like key scenes from the original, but that's when you realize that like the simplicity of what Wes Craven did with like very little money looks so much better than what they were trying to do with like millions of dollars.
Right.
And but I mean, like this, I mean, Freddy versus Jason effects are all over the place. They're like,
varying degrees of good and bad for sure.
Some of them are cool. Some of the gore effects are really cool. There's some really fun kill scenes in this if you're into that.
Yeah.
Even like after the opening where he is explaining like trying to make the kids of Springwood afraid of him again. That whole opening at the house where we meet all the characters, like that. The one asshole boyfriend, the way that he dies.
Oh my god!
First of all, getting macheted in the back, and then just the folding of the bed to
that scene I intimately remembered. I remember that even before I fired up my DVD last night. I was like, I remember that bed kill from way back in the day, and I can't wait to see that again. And it pretty much unfolded as I remembered. But man, that is gruesome and grotesque. I love it.
Yeah, and even though I wish the scene was longer, the whole scene with Jason like slicing everyone up at that like rave little cornfield party,
the cornfield rave, that was like, so random. Yeah,
but fun. I mean, I was like, it could have been a little longer. I thought it was kind of cool.
I agree.
So there's some fun set pieces in this movie that are like really, but then there are some random effects that are like that they ran out of money or I don't know what happened. That whole thing that kind of comes out when the character of Freebird is getting high. And that little Freddy, I don't know what it's supposed to be.
It's like a lizard bug thing.
Bug thing.
What the hell is that?
Couldn't tell what it was. It just looks really bad. And so there's effects like that aren't so
right.
Great,
that looked like it belonged in like Zack Snyder's Slither more than this movie. Like I don't know what the hell that thing was.
And this was a $30 million movie. It's not like it was like cheap, but like they put some money into it.
I mean, it comes at a time where 2000 CGI, it had just been ramping up a lot and it was hit or miss. And this is just one of those times where I feel like they just didn't use the right ones. I don't know how the inner workings of effects, but not that effective. But there are good effects in this movie, but not necessarily like a couple questionable CGI parts. And when it goes into his mouth, I'm like, this looks this looks so bad. Yeah, that is tough to get around. How about when one of my favorite moments, it was literally a laugh out loud moment, it's at the cornfield rave massacre scene when Jason impales this guy with like a big pipe and like literally launches him 100 feet into the like, I'm not even exaggerating. That was like, I burst out laughing at that. That was insanely weird. Yeah,
which kind of cuts the awkwardness of the almost like date rape that was about to happen.
Another super crazy part.
Which I don't know. Like I remember when I saw it, I thought it was weird. But watching it recently for this, I was like, that didn't feel wholly necessary to like have that be.
Also,
I guess it's good. The guy gets this comeuppance, I guess. So that's a good.
But I also felt like that kind of wasn't a very I don't know if honorable is the right word to use, but like I guess a good way to kill off that. I can't remember the name of the female character that also dies in that scene just by him getting stabbed. He like double.
Oh stabs. Yeah, her name is the character's name is Gibbs Smith and played by Katharine Isabelle, who's in
the
Ginger Snaps movies, which a lot of people love.
I need to see that one horror werewolf movie. From
she is considered. She's one of those like kind of around that time like horror movie like icon, because she was in those movies.
I know her from something because she was very, very familiar. I doubt it was from this that I recognized her, but yeah, I like her character was unconscious when she died. I would have liked a different scene for her to go out of, but you're right. He gets his comeuppance. That was fantastic, and then comically launched like so far over the corn. Like, it's insanely funny. It was just broke a lot of the tension, but I thought it was great. There's a lot of moments like that in this movie where it's like you said earlier, it is by all accounts should be a horror extravaganza, but it is by no means a scary movie. I don't think at all.
Not at all. No. That girl actually has a funny moment too at the beginning after her boyfriend dies, and all the characters are like running out in the rain. And that cop pulls up and he's like, "Do you guys need help?" And she's like, "What the fuck do you think?" And her hands are like covered in blood.
Blood, yeah.
Blood, yeah,
that was yes, it's Officer Hal. He's I can never remember his name, but he plays Betty's dad in Riverdale is where I first saw this guy.
Lachlan Monroe. And I guess he's a Canadian actor too, because he was
let's go.
I think they shot some of this or a lot of it in Canada.
Okay.
From what I was told. And which is why there's a lot of Canadian actors in the movie.
Okay.
But yeah, he was one of them. I recognize him from he's in Scary Movie as well. So
yeah, there you go. Yes, it's funny because like I would have seen a bunch of the movies when I was younger that he was in, but didn't recognize or didn't come on and recognize him until I had seen the first couple seasons of Riverdale, and then since going back and revisiting these movies, I keep spotting him in these things. He comes up in the most random places, but he was good. He goes out in style. I would have liked to have seen him.
He went out a hero.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, since we are talking about some of the human characters, I guess we start with I'll ask you what you think about some of them. Monica Keena plays Lori. What do you think of her in the movie? I
didn't feel one way or another about her. She definitely didn't stand out to me and for as far as like horror heroines go. Honestly, I did watch this quite late at night and was a little sleepy and didn't retain a lot of like who was who, like thinking about it, because normally when we do anniversary episodes I generally watch them right before we film. I can't remember where she's at by the end of the movie. Like, which of our human characters survive?
Her and Jason Ritter, who plays her love interest, Will are the two human survivors at the end. And Monica Keena, I only knew of her when I saw this back in the day for the first time. She was on Dawson's Creek. She played Abby Morgan, she was quite the bad girl, and she has a really very dramatic demise on that show that comes out of nowhere.
Okay.
In season 2, you're like, whoa, fuck. Well, like. I guess she needed to go. I
saw that she was a Dawson's Creek alumni, but didn't know your experience with that show or not. But yeah, she was okay.
I think Ronny Yu liked her a lot apparently because she emotes a lot with her face, and I actually noticed that when watching it that she is very like reactive in like a lot of her scenes, whether or not that's like over the top or a little too much. As a matter of debate, I guess.
Right.
She's got a good scream. I mean, that's what you need in a scary movie like this, and she gets to do it quite often. The impression I got from her, and I don't even know, even right now as we're recording, if it's good or bad, it felt like she wasn't playing it as camp. It felt like she was playing it like it was serious. Like she was like it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm making fun of girls who are in movies like this. It like every bit of emotion. Like there's that one scene where she's talking to her friends about the dream she had about Freddy in the middle of the hallway at school.
Yes.
And she's tearing up. And it's like, it's a legit, like real movie monologue where like, it's not like something to be made fun of. It's like, oh, she's actually putting work into her scene right here. And it feels like she took the whole thing seriously. Like she was like, no, she didn't play. I never got the impression that she was being campy at all. Like
nor did I. Even when the movie came across that way at points, I didn't think her performance did either, and I was appreciative of it for her because if I had seen what I thought would have been like and I mean like the comedy series, like a scary movie performance in this, I think that would have taken me out of this movie a little bit more. So I thought she hit the dramatic beats as good as somebody could have in this sort of role.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about this when we mentioned LL Cool J and Halloween H2O. this the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a big thing to get a rapper or some kind of R&B singer to appeal to the African American audience. In the case of this movie, it's Kelly Rowland of
I did not know this until today that Kelly Rowland that she was in this. I must have missed that in the credits, but I was like, what the hell?
Which, at the time this movie came out, Destiny's Child wasn't like kind of huge. They were pretty big at this point in 2003. So it made sense that they wanted to go after someone like her to appeal to a certain pocket of the audience. And, I kind of made that joke about LL Cool J, but like Malika Khan, when he was talking about Halloween show, he's like, our market research so that African Americans love scary movies. Yeah. We need to like put people in that appeal to them.
Yeah.
And that is what Kelly, it's so weird. Like she's a diversity hire, I guess. She has a few clunky line deliveries, but I think overall she's not bad for what the part is and for what she has to do. Like, it's not like it was terrible.
No, but she like her character is like a bitch sometimes, but I feel like her in it is good. Really mean to Linderman, to the nerdy kid, for no real reason other than like I'm prettier than you. That's like the vibe I got. 100%. Yeah.
But then I do. You know what's weird? I feel it sounds so weird to talk about if there is a touching moment, and I'm saying this very like casually. I don't think it didn't make me cry or anything. But when his character dies, and she is like, he basically knows that he's bleeding out and he's gonna die. And she doesn't want to leave him. And he's like, no, right. I'll be fine. And she's like, okay, I'll be back as soon as I can. It's a small little moment, but it's like, hey, they finally got to a point where during that whole fight where everything's burning down, he went to kind of protect her. He got his ass kicked, but he also died. He also died a hero. And that's right. And then I'm glad. They had like a little tiny scene to acknowledge that. I thought that was actually pretty well done between the two of them.
No, you're right. It was something of an arc for them, and that was a nice little cherry on top.
But yeah, she is mean to him for no other reason
terrible.
than like the script told her to. That's exactly. That was like there's no motivation as to why.
I think it was in vogue so rude. At that time. Like cliques were very much represented, especially in horror movies, but just like in cinema overall. And it was just like popular to shit on the nerdy kid. But no, she she was terrible to him. But I think she did a good job actually.
She's in the movie a lot more than I remember too. I was like, she has a pretty decent sized part. It's not just a throwaway role. She does die, and there's a lot of argument about black people in horror movies that tend to die, but she didn't die first. That's right. There's that. she got through most of the movie. There is a bigger controversy with her, and I don't even know if it's her fault. There is a line in the movie.
Oh my god, I already know what you're gonna say.
That she says, what kind of F word, and that F word is a derogatory term for someone that's gay, runs around in a Christmas sweater. The two writers on the movie said they did not write that line. And they said when they saw it at the first screening, they were appalled that was in there, tried to get someone at New Line to delete it or take it out. They didn't remove it.
Clearly.
And no one knows if it was she improv'd it. And Robert Englund, I think it's on the Never Sleep Again. If you've never seen that documentary, that it goes through all the the Nightmare on Elm Street movies in great detail about how they're made and like that whole process.
That would be a super cool watch.
Robert Englund talked about Kelly Rowland on that, and he said from his memory of it and working with her as briefly as he did, it doesn't seem like something that she would improv herself. He thinks that someone from the top, not me. Ronny Yu says it wasn't him, so maybe a producer, someone on the studio level was like, that'll be funny. And we talked about this with like even something in like 98 with Can't Really Wait. There's a lot of stuff that kind of flew in movies back then that
and
I don't think would fly.
Right.
Yeah, it wouldn't fly now. And then that's not too far removed from when that movie came out.
Right.
I'm sure that they thought it was funny. It's not. I mean,
it comes across very poor taste and very like just not like very out of nowhere for that movie.
The thing is, you don't need it because she also has the line about him compensating for something because he has like these like the whole like claws, like the whole thing, like, and like so that is a joke that works. That's not offensive.
Exactly.
And that could have easily just been it. But Robert Englund said that he thinks Kelly Rowland unfairly got a lot of blame for that line, where people thinking that she improv it. I can't, because she wasn't. That was her first movie, I think. I can't see her like having the confidence to like improv it.
No,
you know,
agreed.
Being a Destiny's Child or not, or being huge, then
right,
you know,
very different medium, acting versus singing.
Yeah. But as far as her overall work, Robert Englund said she was great. That there's a show in, I guess, Europe called Top of the Pops, that she was going back and forth filming with Destiny's Child while she was filming Freddy versus Jason.
Nice.
And he said the one thing, I guess, about her that stood out is that there are some people that I think that cross over from certain aspects of the industry that come in with egos. And he said that she came in with not one. That she was like,
nice.
That she was not. She was like, I'm in unfamiliar territory. And this is not normally my thing. I want to learn. And that she was very much like not a diva. She was very much. Monica Keena said the same thing about her, that they really built, like, while filming it, a solid relationship so they could sell the friendship and stuff. Okay. So I thought that was cool, because I think that certain people in of her stature at that time could have easily walked in and be like, well, I'm in this big girl group, and
exactly.
I don't need to.
She would have been a mega star at the time, yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I thought that was really cool that stood out. That she, no ego. She was happy to do everything that they needed to do. They specifically talk about her almost having to give mouth to mouth to Jason.
Yeah, that scene was,
and that was put in. I mean, really, because you have Kelly Rowland, and it's like, okay, like it's more dramatic for it to be her, because it's like, you know, she's a pop star in real life. So you're watching this girl, you know, and he's disgusting, like spitting back up like towards her face while she's about to do it. And then she is kind of funny in that when he's trying to talk to her, she's like, "Shut up!" She's like, "Let me just do this. Shut up!" And so yeah, I thought overall she was pretty cool. But like the rest of the characters, like Will's fine, the boyfriend. I mean, he's a standard, you know, boyfriend.
Exactly. Yeah. Agreed.
Thankless role.
I liked. I can't remember. What Nightmare movies were him and Mark in?
And what's what?
In which of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were they in? Or they brought characters?
They're just brought in for this, so they're new.
Okay.
They're new for this. Yeah. So like, so everyone in here, like they make references to the house, because like the house is, you know, the Nightmare on Elm Street house. Okay. But all the characters that they're mentioning are new, but I mean, in the same, I guess, universe as, you know, everyone, that whole canon of movies.
The movie did a good job, because for me, I've seen the original, like the very first Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen the remake, which, you know, completely separated from this, and then I've seen Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So having not seen many of those in between sequels, the movie did a good job of selling that they like were involved with Freddy beforehand, and so I completely thought they were just from a sequel, like maybe one of the more recent Freddy's or like Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. So I'm surprised to hear that they weren't, because there's a whole back plot of Will like witnessing Laurie's dad
killing her mom.
Yeah, so that just is from out of nowhere. That's like,
that was just for this movie. And the same thing with Mark's brother, and you know, whether or not he committed suicide and all that stuff. You're right. That is, they do a really good job of like setting up a history, even though it just exists for this movie. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too, and I think they did a good job of making it feel like it was maybe within, like, you know, it is the same universe, but it makes it seem like maybe they might have been in other films before this. You know which one I think you would like is the third movie, Dream Warriors.
Yeah,
it is a fan favorite for a lot of people. It's like on the cusp of, he's still scary, but you can tell that they're kind of about to make him a little quippy, but it's like just the right amount, and like probably has some of the sequels has probably some of the best characters in the movie. It takes place in the whole like institution, like the kind of like where Mark and Will are. And so he, you know, they think all these kids are crazy because, like, you know, they're saying this guy is like following them in their dreams, and they bring back Nancy from the first one. She's like a doctor who's like talk. Yeah, so it's like a cool connection. And Wes Craven wrote the story. He didn't write the script, but he came up with the story for it. So
right on. I put some faith in that.
Feels very much like he's involved in it, because, you know, his relationship with Nightmare, you know, it sours a bit after the first movie because he didn't want to make sequels. And
of course. So
and you know, Robert Englund was the one that steered that ship the most, because he was like, "Hey, I'm playing this character that pretty much a rock star within the horror movie community, right?
That's
he became
right.
like a huge star because of it, and he kept it going no matter how silly he got. I mean, he understood Wes's point, but he also knew that this was a machine that he couldn't really stop. So I might as well be involved in some way to maybe make sure the machine doesn't completely fall apart. You know, at least someone from the beginning is there. But yeah, I think the third movie you would like. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. I think I actually have it on DVD. I plan on checking it out because in the horror community, I always see that one brought up as one of, if not the only worthy sequel, other than New Nightmare is like pretty entertaining as well. But definitely on my watch list. Maybe be nice to get around this spooky season, though. We'll be busy with watches. I don't know if I'll find the time, but really hoping to. Yeah, no, I adore the first one.
Yeah, it's pretty much a perfect horror movie, I think. I mean, I have issues with the ending of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, yeah.
Because I love the part, because I think it's so well written where like she figures out like the best thing to do to get rid of him is like to turn her back on him. Like, you know, I'm not afraid of you. Like basically taking away all the power that I've given you. And with that, like I also want my mother and my family, my friends again, like everything you took away, I want back. So I think that moment is so well written and well done.
Yes.
The ending itself feels like something that maybe New Line was like, we need a hook to like maybe set something up. It doesn't feel like a Wes Craven, like it totally his decision.
Right.
That ending in The Room feels more like where he wanted to say like, this is where it ends. And I love that. I just don't love I mean, as a kid, like it was kind of scary, like watching her get like snatched to the door, but like,
also a weird image, for sure. And the Freddy, the Freddy car driving by.
Yeah. But when you're an adult, you're like, all right, that was silly.
Agreed.
That.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you this though. Does this feel? Because you said that kind of you've seen A Nightmare on Elm Street and Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yes.
I don't know how much like Friday the 13th.
Honestly, only the first one, I think, and the remake. And the remakes I'm pretty far removed from. I don't think I've seen a single Jason sequel to tell you the actual truth.
I mean, it's the fun franchise. It's the one that's like, all right, it's not serious. You know what you're watching it for. Like,
sorry, I have seen one of the goofier sequels. Is it what's the one where Tommy resurrects him by mistake, like the lightning bolt goes through the rod? Is it
Jason Lives? Yeah,
Jason Lives. Okay, I have seen that one as like a comedy watch, but
that's a fan favorite one too. People love that one. I mean, it has its fans. I'm one of those people that prefers like with the Jason ones, other than like not the first movie because we know it's Jason's mom that is doing it all in the first movie. But of the Jason's ones, I've always enjoyed 2, 3, 4. Okay. Where he's basically human. I know he's not dying, but he's human. He's not a zombie or whatever the fuck they make him later. I even fuck with part 5, and I know people don't like it because it's not really Jason. It's like a copycat, and that annoys a lot of fans. But it still feels like it has the same DNA as like 2, 3, and 4.
I see.
There are people that love zombie Jason, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh my god,
they're fun, but they're ridiculous. And I mean, I guess I should enjoy them for being ridiculous, but I prefer where I can't let it say like grounded as a Friday the 13th sequel can be. Right. I prefer when they try to be in 2, 3, and 4.
I see what you're saying.
Resurrecting him with a lightning bolt in 6 is ridiculous. That's almost as ridiculous as when Freddy was resurrected in the 4th one with the dog that peed like fire, and then like it's like really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous.
Okay, yeah. Or like Michael's resurrection too.
It's
they
like
all have goofy resurrections. Yeah, there's no way around that.
But I mean, just I guess what does this feel? One of the big complaints is that some fans think it feels like one franchise movie more than the other. Like Freddy vs. Jason feels either more like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie with elements of Friday the 13th. I kind of want to, if you could pick it apart a little bit, if you thought one stood out more than the other.
Yeah, well, certainly by the end of it, I feel like they did a good job of blending both characters, mythos, I guess, but certainly out the gates and maybe a little bit more overall. I think it feels like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie where you have Freddy is leading the movie, doing the exposition. It's very much he is putting in motion the plot by resurrecting Jason and, giving him like the motivation to go out there and kill again for Freddy's sake. So that very much, and it, most of the setting taking place in Springfield and on Elm Street very much feels like that. And I feel like just by nature of like a lot of the cast and the characters that you're following, not thinking or knowing that Jason is the one doing the killing for quite a while. Yeah. Kind of lends it to be more of a nightmare movie. But then like when you're seeing Jason doing what he does best, and then the climax at Camp Crystal Lake, that is Friday the 13th to a T. But if I were to pick one way or another, I definitely feel like it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie and Freddy's show, especially because like the more of like the goofy campness from that movie, I think is borrowed from the later Nightmare movies. Yeah. So, but what do you feel?
I think it feels more like a Nightmare movie, but I think that's by necessity. I feel like in general, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies have more meat to their story.
Agreed.
Than Friday the 13th. I mean, there's not much going on there, and especially the ones with Jason. There's not a lot of plot. There's just a new set of kids, just everyone, and he kills them. There's not much more going on. They try to add certain like little plot points in like the final chapter and like stuff like that, but really it is a slasher movie in the simplest of simplest terms. There's not a lot of story, and I guess the good thing about Nightmare on Elm Street for a lot of horror fans and why it gets a little bit more respect of the bigger ones that come, like Halloween and Friday the 13th, is that there is more to that story. There's like a lot more, a little bit more depth to what goes on in Nightmare on Elm Street. The fact that like you have like, this guy was like a child murderer who, let go in a technicality, and then like the parents of these kids like basically embarked on some like vigilante justice and like killed him, and their punishment for that is this guy who went after their children in real life is now going after their kids in their dreams. Like there's the psychology of that is like so much more interesting than what
you're very right
you would get in a Friday the 13th movie. So I think just by necessity, I think it had to feel more like a Nightmare movie than a Friday the 13th movie.
That being said, though, I do like what they like the motivation for Jason to go out and target the people on Elm Street, like with Freddy impersonating his mother. I thought that was a really slick way of kind of tying in some of Jason's backstory and his motivation. I really thought that was cool. Instead of, I don't know how it would have worked otherwise. Jason's not the type to listen to other people's demands. He's very much motivated by his mother. So I thought that was honestly pretty slick. So I did like that, but doesn't by any means lead it to be more of a Jason movie though.
I don't know. I got the vibe, and I know some people complain about this too. They tend to make, even though Jason is murdering people relentlessly, they make him kind of a sympathetic figure compared to Freddy in this, where it feels like maybe you should be rooting for him more than like maybe Freddy Krueger. I don't know if that's like a good choice because like they're both, it kind of neuters Jason like a tad,
a bit.
Because like when that scene where Lori goes in the dream and she's at Camp Crystal Lake and she sees everyone picking on him and like, they're not paying attention to him and he drowns and like it seems like you're supposed to feel sorry for him, right? And it seems like she almost feels sorry for him, and at least in the dream she does. But again, he of course doesn't care about her one way or the other. Like he gets out of that dream, he would have killed her regardless. But I just thought that was interesting that it seems like they tried to make one more sympathetic over the other.
I thought it was a good move actually, and when you think about it, like Jason for the most part is just Freddy's pawn in this movie. So if you were to feel one way or the other, it would make sense that like Freddy's out there just to reign terror and evil. And just Jason is more of his medium of accomplishing that. So I feel like you could feel a little bit sorry for Jason in a sense, other than until the last moment where you think, maybe that he can be changed. And then turns out he's still good old Jason and doesn't really give a shit one way or another, which I think is another strong suit of that movie that is just sticking true to what he is as a character, and which is just a mindless murdering machine.
Yeah. And I also like the idea of like them using like Freddy like went into his like subconscious to kind of see like what scares him. So like, like this, it kind of made him more than just some kind of brute with a machete. Like there's like stuff going on inside his head. Like,
that's right. That was cool.
Like he clearly needs therapy or something because he's not quite over all the stuff he's gone through as a kid and all that.
When Jason is tranquilized and Freddy has him trapped in this like waterfall, and he realizes, oh, so there is something you're afraid of. Like I thought, you're right. That was a really cool scene. Also,
that whole scene just shot really well too. Actually, the movie looks, other than a few clunky like visual effects, like it's a very good looking movie. It's like shot really well. It's like pretty slick. I think Freddy's makeup effects in this are pretty good. I mean, I know some people think varying from movie to movie, they depends on which one you like the most, but I thought he looked pretty solid in this. I thought Jason looked solid too.
Yeah, Jason looked really cool. I think he looked better than Freddy actually. There were scenes where I thought where Freddy was like not as covered up, where his makeup looked like makeup more than natural. But I did read too that apparently in some of the scenes where Freddy or Robert Englund rather was filmed around fire, some of his makeup kind of like caked onto his face from the heat. Yeah, that was pretty insane.
He's like slowly becoming.
What do you think that makeup process was like? I'm sure it's well documented, but I don't know anything. It must have been hours in the chair.
Hours in the chair. You know what's funny though? Going back to the first movie, he talked about it in his documentary that he did about him trying to figure out what his motivation as Freddy would be, right? So he said what worked for him is he's like, you got beautiful Johnny Depp and like beautiful Heather Langenkamp, all these like young people who didn't have to sit in the makeup chair for hours and hours and hours. He said he used all that like kind of negative feelings that he had while he was like watching them basically not have to go through what he was going through,
right?
And use that for the character. Like that's what that is, like all the kind of like hate that Freddy felt for these characters. He said starts in the makeup chair because he was like, it was. I mean, especially in that first movie, they're still having to figure it out, you know, and then he just kept using that for every one he did after that. It was, it's interesting too, though, because Robert Englund, I love to hear, like, you can listen to him talk about these movies forever. Like, he talks about, I guess it's good that someone like that talks about them much more than them just being like horror films. Like, he respects the ins and outs of every one of them, even the ones that people that weren't really that well received. There's something about each movie that he speaks very highly of.
Right.
And it really comes down to like the cast too. Like all the people he's got to work with, like who have been opposite Freddy, who opposed Freddy. He always has really positive things to say about each film and each experience that he got to do. And I think that's really cool too. Like even though, of course that's first story, he was like, all right, I'm going to use that anger for this. Like he said he just had a lot of respect for everyone that kind of came through each movie. And he also loved when he got to work with some of the same people again. Like Heather Langenkamp was in 3 of them. She's in the first one, and Dream Warriors and New Nightmare.
Right.
Lisa Wilcox is probably the second most known Final Girl. She's in number 4 and 5. He liked working with her, just different energy than Heather Langenkamp. Right. Mark Patton, who's in Nightmare 2. He liked working with him, and like that movie has kind of gone and grown into its own. I
don't hear much about Nightmare 2, actually.
Well, it's considered from a lot of people the gay Nightmare movie because there's a lot of subtext in it that, depending on who you ask, it was either by accident or on purpose. But they knew that Mark Patton, the filmmakers, knew that they were working with an actor who was gay but wasn't out. And there's a lot of stuff in the movie. When you watch some of the scenes and just think about like, oh, what are they really trying to say? Like there's a scene where Freddy's trying to take over his body, basically. Okay. And he's talking to his best friend. And the way, if you were to take that dialogue and put it into like a coming out scene, that's what it would be. He's like, he's telling his friend, like, there's something inside of me and I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. It's a lot of dialogue like that.
Yeah, I see.
And it's like actually really kind of heavy handed.
Yeah.
And then of course you're using like Freddy as this physical representation of like something that's coming out of him.
Right.
And that, he can't, and something he can't control. And, so that movie was actually, it made a little bit more money than the first one. It got really not great reviews, but in the years since, people watch it a lot differently, knowing that subtext is kind of accepted now. And Mark Patton did a documentary too about his experience on Nightmare 2. And, he's come to terms with like what that movie is and what that movie means for a lot of people in the community as well, who like really embrace that one the most for that specific reason. It grew on me for sure. I used to not like it, but I also, when I was younger, didn't catch the subtext until I got older.
Right.
And I was like, yeah.
Okay.
It's good. I see what you're doing there.
One of these days, I'm sure I'll get around to watching it. But I definitely feel like throwing on the first one again here sometime soon, because that one's very special.
There's just a lot of movies, right? There's like 7 Nightmare movies, and then plus Freddy versus Jason. You got 10 main Friday the 13th movies plus Freddy versus Jason. They both have reboots. Honestly, during spooky season, I used to try to do the whole like marathon, like I'm gonna watch 1 through 7 nightmares back to back, but now I just get selective. Now I'm like, I'm gonna watch Nightmare 3, and that will be the first one as well, and then that'll be it. If I do Friday the 13th, I can actually get through the first 4 because they're really short. They're like, some of them are like less than 90 minutes, so it's like they're a breeze.
Yeah, I also have a lot of respect for the first one being like more or less a student project, very cheaply made. Yeah. And then ultimately, the other, right on the heels of Halloween, but definitely helped to spark and cultivate the slasher craze.
I mean, that was their motivation.
Yeah,
for sure. Like they saw how successful that movie was. I mean, the fact that they took out an ad, the newspaper with no real script or plot, it was just like the Friday the 13th logo. And that was what they kind of bought, and they were like, "Okay, well now let's write this thing and figure out what it is." And it ultimately worked. I mean, like, there's an argument to be made that it's the only good one. Like, as a film. It's a really like it's a solid, it's a decent like murder mystery. Like, has been like I love showing it to people that are unaware that Jason is not even like the main. Like, when they don't know it's the mother, they're like genuinely surprised by that. By that reveal. But yeah, I mean, and I say this I'm saying this, guys. I own all of them. There's something I like about every single one of those movies. They're fun, but I think we can all agree that the first one is the only good like film, that tries to be a good film, and the other ones are just like, hey, this is what works. Let's just do this. And, I mean, Paramount Pictures looked at that franchise as their rotten stepchild. It's making them all this money, but they were just like, they don't want to be proud of it at all. Yeah,
right.
But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. They're fun. I mean, I think people enjoy them for just how ridiculous they are, and like, those movies. I mean, more so than Halloween. They say like created the whole or started the whole slasher craze, and I guess you can say that it did. But what started the whole like gore slasher craze, I think, it's Friday the 13th. I think after that, you just have a bunch of like gory 80s, high body count movies for the sake of a high body count. Right. You don't get to know anybody really. Yeah, you don't get to know any of the characters. Like, it's just like, all right, that girl's gonna die and that guy's gonna die. You can tell who your main girl is. That's always like the same type of girl. It's always
of course. Probably she's the sweet one. One of the early ones to start that trend. Of course, Halloween did it as well, but certainly I like that it injected gore into the slasher craze, because Halloween is notably without it, and that's one of my favorite. We know how much you love gore. I like my violent movie. I like my movies violent and gory. It's just adds something to it.
Jackson is not happy until he sees some intestines falling out of his stomach.
What were we talking about for that one? Where did that come from?
I forgot what it was. It was I forgot what it was. I mean, was it Killer Joe, or was it another movie that we were talking about?
Oh, I think it was something else. Killer Joe doesn't come to mind, but no, I know that was definitely part of our early conversation.
I might have to go back. That conversation's up there in the mythos with the whole Rachel Zegler, poor man's Jenna Ortega. It's like up there. Like, when did that happen?
Moments for sure.
Are there any other like scenes or moments that? Well, actually, you know what? What did you think about the fight, the brawl itself? Like, long enough, not long enough, just the right amount.
If anything, I think right around I wouldn't have wanted too much more. I don't know what else they could have done other than just trade blows for however long. I thought it was cool to see them both. They both got a chance. It almost felt like a Mortal Kombat scene where they both, they both keep trading 1-ups from each other, but they don't. I think they only really have enough steam to overpower the other one or two times before something has to change. But I gotta say, I didn't care for the scene where like Freddy is like using his like claws to like throw Jason around.
Like the whole like telekinetic scene in the
I didn't care for that. Other than to show, it kind of did make Jason seem like even more domineering and powerful, where nothing really keeps him down.
Yeah.
I'm also a little confused now, thinking of how that would work, because at that point in the movie, they had they already yanked Freddy into the real world from the dream world at that point?
No, not
okay,
yet.
that,
so
okay, that makes sense.
I think the only reason I think that scene actually works is to show like what Freddy can do in his world, and then when you pull him out, he has very little power in the real world, so he can't really toss Jason around like with his, even though I never really. I was like, I tried to think back to the other Nightmare movies. I was like, did he ever do that? I have to go back and watch.
Like telekinesis and little spurts at points, but nothing quite like that I remember. But yeah, I guess you're right, because that's right before he like traps him in the water, and he's okay. So that makes sense, I guess. But I still, regardless, watching it on screen, I was like, okay, it's a little one of the several goofy parts of it. But where Jason hacks Freddy's limbs off too was like pretty crazy. And then for him to eventually impale into the back with his own hand, I thought was also pretty neat. I gotta say, I do like that it is kind of left ambiguous. I think you can make an argument for either one kind of slowly or very narrowly being above the other in terms of like who definitively won.
Has anyone ever like done a YouTube video like blow count, like how many how many hits did each one get? I would love to see if anyone.
I'm sure it's been done. If it's not published, I'm sure somebody has done there. But if someone feels like running the numbers, by all means, do it. One good point I read when I was just like researching, like I just kind of was Googling like who, just to see what other people were saying, like who was the winner of Freddy versus Jason. Someone made a good point where like Freddy's really like exists in the dream world more than the real world. So for him to be defeated there doesn't really do a whole lot for like the real defeat of his character. Harder to really take down Jason in a definitive way, but I think it's perfectly ambiguous enough for I'm happy with it. I also didn't leave me really wanting a sequel because I think that would grow old quickly.
So
what do you feel about that?
We kind of talked about that at the beginning, right? Because this thing hits and everyone's like, okay, now we got to do like a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash from Evil Dead, right? And I guess that would have been fun, but I don't think I would want to see more from. I mean, I was fine with what we got, and like I don't think I would need to see more than. And I definitely didn't want to see other fucking monster movie mashups with like Michael Myers or Pinhead.
Oh, so you wouldn't have wanted to see that?
No, okay. No. I think it works for these two. Yeah, there's something about like these characters where it's like, oh, they're not like Michael Myers. It still feels grounded in reality, where it feels like it's a real thing, and
You're
like
right.
I would
agreed.
And so that wouldn't work with like him and Pinhead or anything like that. I wouldn't want to see that.
I would like to see Pinhead in somebody though. Even Pinhead and Jason would have been cool.
Or Freddy too. I guess they're in the same kind of like, they're both pretty
same type. Exactly. And the fact that they kind of like can traverse hell, I think would be a great spot. They're actually, so I did read in one of the earlier versions, Pinhead was written in to have encountered them in hell and sort of like kind of settle the feud between them, which would have been really cool.
Yeah, I would
have loved to have seen that. I'm a huge Pinhead fan. But that being said, so what are your thoughts on like Alien versus Predator? Because that's a crossover that I really admire.
So I haven't watched
perfect. Don't get me wrong.
I haven't watched it in so long, but I remember having a similar issue like that. I think it's actually worse, not worse as a film, but like worse than this when you talk about like the regular people characters and what you really want to see.
Yes.
And I wanted more Alien versus Predator action and less of whatever that main story was with the other characters. That's why I remember
archaeologists.
Yeah. I remember the sequel being better, but I haven't watched that in a long time either.
That's watch it again, and I'm sure you won't say the same thing. It is markedly poorly received. Well, I used to say the same thing. There's elements of it I like more. I like that it takes place in like an urban area, and you see them battling it out in like a suburban neighborhood. Basically, there's a lot of cool stuff there and some good kills, but decidedly a worse movie. I also like you're totally right. I would have liked the movie to have been focused more on aliens and predators battling it out more so than the humans, but I feel like their conflict is a little bit more naturally conceived than like Freddy and Jason, I guess. So if you were to rewatch it, I think you'd probably glean some good things out of it. I've always held that movie dear because I've seen one of the earlier movie experiences I remember. Watching that with my dad on like the Spike channel, like when I was like, I don't know, 5, way too young to be seeing that.
One of the big debates about Alien versus Predator was the choice to, I think it was PG-13, and that was done to appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah.
And I think they rectified that with the second one. I think that they made that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
And but I do remember, much like with Freddy versus Jason, I loved all the like posters and key art that came out for Alien versus Predator. There was a lot of cool like imagery from it. Yeah. And another like it's so crazy. Like in a similar way that this was like Freddy versus Jason was in development hell forever. Like Alien versus Predator was too. I mean, that was a much talked about thing for a very long time before it became an actual thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that you would have want more like Freddy versus, like you would have liked to see that.
Well, I was
like, how would you do it again?
Sorry, like I wouldn't have want like sequels to this one, but I would have liked to maybe because we didn't
like spin-offs, I guess.
Yeah, that
different
exactly.
People.
Exactly. Like I think it would be cool to find some other horror icons that would have worked together and seen them interact together. Only maybe because I'm saying this because we didn't get more, that maybe if we had have got them, I'm sure they've there's a chance it would have been shit, and I would have wished we didn't have a world with those. But because we didn't, I think there's just so much potential out there. I think it would be really cool. Like, I don't know. They're like, I don't know. There could be so many ridiculous mashups. I think somewhere in the line there could have been some good ones that would have worked together, but I won't bother speculating because like Chucky and Annabelle come to mind, but I don't know if they would blend very well.
Well,
but there's some I think that could be cool.
Well, she doesn't really like emote, so I mean, she's just more of a scary thing than
exactly
compared to Chucky.
Very poor example, but
I mean, Chucky and Freddy both have foul mouths. They have that in common. They both are very, they curse like sailors. So
that's right. Totally.
Oh god, yeah. This is remind me. It's not a curse line, but when Kelly Rowland Kia, after he's going after Lori and Will, and then she yells for him, and he like doesn't know who to go for, like who he wants to kill.
Yeah.
And then he has that line, "How sweet dark meat." That movie, that line in the theater was like a huge hit in the theater. And I actually just read something on Slash Film when they were talking about Kelly Rowland's line that is controversial. Yeah, they thought that line was like kind of racist. And I was like, well, I mean, it's funny though. I mean, like that is funny to me without being offensive. Like, it's not like,
well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, like that.
I found it funny because I didn't feel like it came across as offensive, but obviously I wouldn't know. But
and also on brand for what that character would say. I mean, like what that is like.
Well, it's also a spin-off of an earlier line of his. It's fresh meat, right?
Yeah.
I love that Joe Blow Horror uses that as their intro.
Audio.
So I listen to that all the time.
No, I thought it was so like I thought it was a good line. It's like I was like, don't get
it's not innately negative by any means. I thought it was like you said, in line with what Freddy would say.
Dude, like howling in the theater when that line came out. I was like, everyone was like, yes, it was so good. But of course, I'm like trying to see what people think of the movie now, like 20 years later, and that was one of the things that got brought up. I was like, all right, well,
yeah. I mean, it's worth pointing out, but I struggle to find like why it would be considered
to
racist,
me. That does not live. That does not live in the same space as the.
Oh my god!
Her line like right after that.
No,
because like
no.
And, it's not clever, it's not funny, and you already have the other. Yeah. You already have the other lines that she has that actually are good zingers that that you didn't really need it. It was unnecessary for her to even say it. But yeah, the dark meat thing is hilarious.
No, I'm glad you agree because I laughed at that too.
One more thing I want to ask you unless there's nothing else you wanted to talk about with the movie. I know some people get upset, even though I think it makes it clear. There are some people that think it's Lori that defeats both of them because she sets the bridge thing on fire and like whatever.
Yes.
But and then she cuts Freddy's head off, so she gets the last like blow. I guess. What do you think about that?
And
because I remember I was watching it, I was like, wait. Well, she. Like Jason like impales him with like his thing, but she cuts his head off. But she cuts his head off. So I mean,
but even then, I never like when I was watching it, I didn't get the impression. So yeah, she might have like maybe ended the battle by like setting it on fire and exploding it, but I don't think like to contextualize it, I don't think she ended or did anything to impact like the war between them. Really, just if anything, just kind of like ended that set piece and a big explosion, but. Ultimately, I wouldn't consider by the end of that movie either of them being necessarily defeated. So hard to really get behind that. Because Jason's walking out of the water more or less fine, if not a little worse for wear. And Freddy, I mean, while decapitated, is still very much, still same old Freddy, just a little bit dismembered. I think his wink at the camera is just a chef's kiss. Yeah, perfect little ending. No, I wouldn't really say Laurie defeats either of them if you ask me, but do you feel differently?
No, I kind of feel. I mean, I get where horror fans would be like, "Hey, why? We wanted to watch them fight and see who wins between those two," and like it almost like she kind of interrupts. I mean, I get the kind of complaints, but I think overall, I think what people have to understand, myself included, because I know I just made that same comment about like, yo, Alien versus Predator. I just want to see them go at it. I don't really care about the other people, but you do need you need to have a plot. I mean, I know like you need to have people that drive the movie forward. And in the case of like Alien versus Predator, you need humans because like the Predator and the Alien, they don't think really. They don't have like monologues. They're not like driving the plot forward. But you need other people to do that. So I totally get it, and I think that is what people need to realize with this too, is that the stuff with like the characters in this, it's necessary to get the ball rolling to get to where we end up. And
certainly,
I don't think it's a thing where she comes out on top. Now I know the original ending of the movie was not focused so much on Freddy and Jason. They actually had an ending that they tested that audiences hated, and Laurie and Will are at home and they're having sex, and then he turns into Freddy midway through and kills her, and that's how it ends. And it was just like a cheap kind of like shock ending that didn't really make a lot of sense. It
feels akin to the original ending of the first one. Yeah,
and they were like, and they said that kind of takes away from the whole like Freddy versus Jason aspect of it, and that's why they ultimately decided to get rid of it. And I'm glad they did. I mean, it's on
me too.
It's on the Blu-ray or DVD under the special features, I think. So you can see it there or on YouTube. But it really like he like raises his hand and is like claws come out of his fingers and he like slashes her. It really is like a cheap shock ending, I guess.
Sounds it.
But yeah, I think it ended the way it should have. Like we said, this is much better than we could have. When you go through like 17 writers that tried to crack this, and
that is a nightmare, the true nightmare. Having to play and tweak with all those different aspects.
I think what we got, like I was debating on what score to give it because I know we give scores for these at the end.
You beat me to it. I was going to ask you the inevitable question.
Well, this has a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, and I think that is kind of mean because like I feel like I feel like I should be grading it on like a what it is. Like it's for what it is, right?
Right.
I'm almost reluctant to say what I was going to give it.
I won't be judging you because while I think this movie was perfectly entertaining, I wouldn't necessarily rate it what I would consider a good score. But
I mean, I'll give it like a 6.5. I was going to go a little bit higher, but I'll give like a 6.5.
Only because there's movies that I like more that I would give a 6.5. I'm more inclined to meet this right in the middle, give it a 5, where like the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, but it's like so close.
And by the way, guys, we were grading this on it's so campy, it's fun curve. I mean, it's not like
exactly. Is it so effective horror? No,
but it's fun.
Yeah,
and certainly. Definitely a breezy 97 minutes. It's like it goes by so fast, and it doesn't drag, and like it really is like there's a lot of really fun stuff. Like if you're looking for, I think, if you didn't want to just watch a nightmare movie, you're like, oh, like Part 5, The Dream Child, that sucks. Like Freddy's Dead sucks. I think this one kind of meets in a good happy place where it kind of has the best of both worlds from both franchises, and I think you'll be happy with the outcome. I was happy with it 20 years ago. I was happy with it watching it for this. It took me back to that, like I said, to seeing it in the theater for the first time, and with a crowd that just absolutely loved it, and also
that is amazing.
And like I said, like it came at a time where both franchises were coming off of flops, so it was like it felt good to be like, oh, like it's the #1 movie in America for 2 weeks. Like
it just makes it so much stranger that it didn't do much else for these characters other than to
like expand on that more. Like that it's crazy. I mean, and maybe
rarely does that happen.
Maybe those kind of spin-off sequel ideas where it seemed like they were probably maybe headed for that same development hell. They're like, we don't want to go through this again.
Perhaps
maybe. But yeah, guys, this is much better than I think we could have ever expected from this just concept that was born out of the idea of like, hey, like what would it be like if these two characters like duked it out? There's not much else there. other than that.
Exactly. And I'm glad that it exists and that it was made and that it's a part of the horror subculture. So fantastic overall. Just such a rare needle in a haystack sort of movie that we just don't have a lot of. But I want to bookmark now during this conversation. Certainly want to cover Alien versus Predator on its 20th anniversary next year, without a doubt.
Oh, there we go. That.
Yeah, so that'll be a time to
somewhere on this wall. Yeah. It's in there somewhere.
I have it both in my Alien and Predator anthology pack, which I'm very happy about. That was one of my earlier gifts to myself when I started collecting. And
you know what's crazy though? Alien versus Predator, they made around the same amount of money like domestically, but Alien versus Predator did $177 million worldwide compared to 116 for Freddy versus Jason.
Okay,
and so it was successful. I mean,
certainly.
I think people might feel mixed about it now. Like, oh, I wish it was rated R. I wish it kind of went harder with the action. But that would be a fun one to cover because I actually haven't watched that in years.
That would be a great way. I find that movie. I mean, my love for it over the years, like cinematic quality has diminished, but it still holds a special place, and I think it's great for what it is. But and then you got to check out that sequel too, and let me know what you think afterwards.
I gotta go back. I was like, I remember it being better. Like, no. Are you remember?
There are good moments. It's not like you won't hate yourself watching it, I doubt. But I think the first one's stronger. But that will be a conversation for another time. Ultimately, yeah.
Just a quick rundown of what some critics thought of this movie because we just gave it our kind of scores. Yep. The Miami Herald said it is a surprisingly ambitious entry into a genre that felt bankrupted over more than a decade ago. The San Francisco Chronicle said, considering what the filmmakers had to work with and the fact that it's all been done before, Freddy vs. Jason isn't bad, and sometimes not bad is almost good.
I agree with that in a lot of ways.
Attempts none of the witty, provocative visual and metaphysical set pieces from any of the Nightmare movies, and it offers none of the real fright of the early Friday the 13th films. In fact, the movie is deeply, proudly unimaginative, says the Boston Globe. The Baltimore Sun said the setup is bad even by slasher movie standards, poorly acted, atrociously written, and unimaginatively directed. But once Freddy and Jason have added, the movie takes on a recklessly kinetic energy that finally delivers on its title's promise.
Okay, so harsh reception, I think, kind of indicative of that 37 Metascore that it's still sitting with. I knew it wasn't loved.
It wasn't made. It wasn't made for them.
No, it's one of the many cases of critics just not knowing what they're showing up for, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, James Wan was also attached to direct this at one point.
That's right.
Committed to doing Saw, so that's good.
I read that earlier too when I was surfing through trivia and thought that if I can't imagine him doing this movie, but it would have been cool. I'm glad he gave us Saw, but again, Rob Zombie having done this would have been just such a different movie, and I would have loved to have seen what he would have done with it. But oh well.
Yeah. Also, interesting tidbit. The biggest problem that occurred on set, because there weren't really many, but was a fight between director Ronny Yu and Katharine Isabelle, who plays Gib. She signed on to the film on the promise that she would not have to do nude scenes, as she has a strict no nudity clause in her contract. During the shoot, Yu went back on this promise and repeatedly tried to pressure her to get naked. They eventually settled on using a body double for her nude scenes. But she did not get along with him, I guess.
I guess not. Well, I mean, hearing that kind of just like takes away from like this movie, because I remember thinking that scene where whoever like the first victim in the movie gets killed just goes pointlessly skinny dipping. It is unabashedly just new.
Very much a Friday 13th. That's more of a Friday 13th thing, than a nightmare thing.
That's right,
for sure. This is also the first Freddy movie not filmed in the United States, and the filmmakers had to search for a new house that would resemble the famous Freddy Krueger Elm Street house from the first 7 Nightmare films. Yes, the Nightmare on Elm Street house is actually located here from the original movie, but they actually replicated it pretty well in this for it to not be the same house. Like the outside of it looks exactly like that.
Here is in California.
Really cool. Yeah, it's in it's near Hollywood. It's actually around the corner from the 2 houses that were used for Halloween, where they're babysitting across the street from each other. So the whole scene where like Laurie runs from one house to the next when he's like chasing her across the street, that's near Hollywood. There's like a street. There are several streets in the area that really look like small town, like Illinois. Like those streets just look like small Midwestern towns. And like if you were to walk off of that street and go in like to the main street, it's LA. But once you are on those streets where those houses are, it looks like a small town.
when I get out there, we
have to do that too.
Going to see. Oh my god! Just add that to the list. I did not realize. Like, I figured maybe they'd be on a lot. I wasn't sure. Like at the studio lot, but that is insane that they're that close. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. They're really like around the corner from each other. So these two like kind of horror movie icon locations, and it's interesting too being at the Halloween ones. Those two houses in particular, because the run from across the street to one house to the next seems so long in the movie. Yeah. But if you're looking at it from like house to house, it's not really a lot of distance to like movie magic. Make that run. But they make it seem like it was like much further away from each other. And the people that live there at both, and there's like a lot of Halloween locations in LA and Pasadena. Like they have the whole like Halloween bush, where her and Annie are walking down the street, and he like is standing in the middle of the street, and he goes to hide behind like the shrub or whatever. Yep. That shrub is still there, and they won't let you cut it. Like whoever agrees
that's awesome.
Whoever agrees to live on that property is one of the things that like you cannot get rid of this. And everyone that lives at those locations are very happy with they're very happy with the people that come and take pictures. They're cool with it. They know it's part of like movie history. They don't get like mad. They don't want you, of course, go on their doorsteps or anything, but like you can take pictures in front of the houses and video and stuff, and that's they're perfectly fine with it. Yeah. But yeah, there's like all these little things that they're like, don't fuck it up. We have to keep it. It's part of like cinematic history.
Small tidbit just on the other side of those things, that the house where Breaking Bad is filmed, like Walter White's house, the owners of that, because that's a real house as well. And there is a chain link fence around the property, and they are notorious for hating people coming to show.
For coming.
There's a thing. When you get around to seeing the show, you'll understand that people will drive by and throw a pizza on the roof of that house because it's a famous scene, and it's happened so many times, I guess, that they're furious about it. So I think that is a hilarious, what's the word I'm looking for? Contrast, I guess.
Yeah. From like the people who are happy to have people come, they're like, no.
That's how I feel if I was living in that house. I'd be like, yes, by all means.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff to like the Hermosa Beach Community Center. Parts of the prom scenes for Carrie were filmed there, so that's like really close to where we live. Of course, Torrance High is like 10 minutes away from Hermosa. That's where the Buffy high school stuff is filmed. 90210, She's All That.
Oh, you must love that. That's sick.
Because it looks like a movie high school. Like the only high school down here that looks like that doesn't look real. It looks like legit like a movie high school. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that was shot down here. They're actually doing, and I hope I get to work it. I put in my press credentials for it. In Pasadena, they're doing 45 Years of Terror for Halloween, inviting a bunch of people from across all the movies to like do the convention and like talk to fans and do all these signings and stuff. But a part of it is a tour of parts of Pasadena where a lot of Halloween was also shot. So you get to go to like all these different locations with fans and take pictures, and a lot of people dressed up for it. You'll see a ton of Michael Myers' walking around the neighborhood, which is really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. And like the one location from Halloween that is moved from its original spot, the Myers house from the first movie, they were going to tear it down, and then someone actually bought it and they relocated it to a spot where they could preserve it, where they can actually more people can go and like take pictures of that. Now it's kind of used as like an office building, but also used for people that want to come and take pictures. And so they didn't have to get rid of it. They didn't want them to tear it down.
Okay, I'd love to hear that. That's great that it still exists.
Yeah, so yeah, cool. a lot of history over here.
Certainly, yeah. And I can't wait to experience it for myself. I'm dying. It's gonna be like a dream come true.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because like I've had friends ask like, is he gonna like want to do like Hermosa stuff or like the Hollywood stuff? Like, I was like, I think both. I think
certainly both. Yeah.
I was like, I will get the stuff, the Hollywood. I'll do that with them, so like you guys don't have to do it because I know they're like, oh, we've done it. Right. I will do like because I totally still like it. Yeah, I totally still love doing it,
and just be able to be a tour guide in a sense would be probably pretty cool.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. Yeah, I have fun doing it. But I know that they've done that before. They're like, yeah, we've been there, done that. They're like, we'll show them the beach.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I will love everything to see over there. But yeah, no, I definitely got to go see and I'm dying to like tour a studio or two. Would be awesome as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, like it's Sony Pictures over here, Paramount, Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
like all that's down here. Yeah, so that'd be a lot pretty fun. And
lots to look forward to.
By the time you get here, there won't be a strike. So cool.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Hopefully. But yeah, like I said, this was a fun rewatch. We had a really good time like visiting it. I thought this would be a fun one to.
I'm glad we did
explore. It low key made me want to watch some of the. I mean, I'm so excited to start watching horror movies. Like it's August 28th, and like I swear, like once September hits, I like. We don't know what our first. We got to talk about what our first thing is going to be that we're going to talk about for spooky season, and everything that I'm watching for this, it necessarily won't be talked about on here.
Right.
But I really, it's those 2 months is all horror movies all the time. So I'm so excited to
61 days of horror.
Yeah,
movies.
I was so pumped. I was like, do I want to watch more nightmare movies? Do I want to watch Friday the 13th? I was like, that's how I kind of felt after it was over a little bit. But yeah, you know.
I agreed. Now more than ever, now meaning like this time of the year, more than any other time of the year, am I constantly juggling which movies do I want to see again, because a lot of movies I want to watch on an annual basis, like Halloween's, Alien, Exorcist, but sometimes I'm like, well, inevitably this is going to take away time to watch something I haven't seen in maybe 5 or 10 years or a new release or something. So as much as it sucks to waste all the time juggling, it's the best problem you can have.
Yep. And I have it. It's like, this is such a nerd thing, but I like have to watch Halloween on Halloween.
Me too, but it differs which one I watch though for me.
Yeah, I can see that. And there's been times, of course, when Halloween will fall on like a Friday or a Saturday. And of course, everyone, once you get older, they want to go out rather than like stay in and watch movies. So there's been times where I have legit like, yo, let's get ready to go out. Like, all right, we're going to pregame. I was like, fuck it. I am bringing that movie to wherever we're pre-gaming, and I'm turning it on while we pre-game before we go out. And
that is awesome.
I'm not breaking tradition. And actually, they end up enjoying watching it while they're like kind of throwing back shots and having a good time. Like they're paying attention to it.
Oh, nice.
But it's
we're cut from the same cloth, clearly.
Yeah, so it's still part of like tradition. I have to watch it on Halloween. And like when I watch it even before that, I always was like, oh, too early. But you want to get it in, you know, during that time of the year. So
I want to start having like Halloween watch parties, because like I think most of my Halloweens I've just spent alone, but I would very much want to like have some friends over and just celebrate, not even in the movie, just to have it on and like, you know, drink in the background or something, but just to have and enjoy, because it's such a tradition I treat sacredly. So it's nice to share with people.
Well, I miss that transition where we used to do that a lot, like I guess 16, 17, 18, early 20s, and then 22, 23, you start to like, oh, we're going out.
Right.
And like Halloween becomes more about like Halloween parties rather than hanging out and watching movies. And I do remember that transition being like, oh, well, we're not doing this as much anymore. And I do. I mean, of course, Halloween parties are fun and they're great, but they also can get really old. Like it's the same thing every year, just with different costumes. So
at least around here, I don't find it. I find it rarely lands on the actual day. So like when Halloween's on a Monday or Wednesday, it's easy just to sit back, put your feet up and
you
watch
just make an excuse.
Movies.
You're just like,
it really depends on what day of the week it lands on. But I like to, even if it's October 30th, like I'm getting that watch in.
If it lands on a Friday, Saturday, I gotta fight to include what I want to watch into like trying to mix in going out with my friends, because you know they're all like, yo, we want to go out, let's do this. I'm like, all right, man.
Actually,
we went to one bar one time that was really cool. They were actually playing. We had already watched it, but it was one of the bars in Hermosa was actually playing the original Halloween on TV while we were like at the bar. Awesome. And they had the sound on it, which I was like really surprised. I thought they were going to be playing music or something. Okay, I think it was early enough in the night where they were like, okay, we can play this, and the movie's not long by any means. So like, and I thought that was really cool that they had that on while
that is pretty cool.
We were on the bar.
Depending on what Thursdays are like over in Hermosa Beach, that is the day of the week that oh wait, no, I'm looking at August. Oh my god. It's a Tuesday this year, so whatever. I'm probably gonna watch it with my mom. I hope anyway.
Oh, there we go. Awesome. Oh, if it's on a Tuesday,
shouldn't be a struggle this year.
I get to just watch it at home, like with maybe convince like 1 or 2 people to come over and watch it. But yeah, I don't have to compete with like the weekend.
Exactly. You know, so I guess that'll be before probably people will celebrate.
Yeah.
Like the 28th.
And I know we have it's Halloween, it's in our anniversary calendar this year. It'll be 45.
Right.
And then of course Halloween 4 has an anniversary too. So that might be a time to talk about. Yeah. It's funny. We covered the Halloween franchise last year on the show, but we didn't cover like just Halloween. And I've never had that would be a cool discussion just to have about just that first movie, because I've actually never just talked about the first movie before. Like we talked about the franchise as a whole. But yeah, never just the first movie on its own. So I might be a good time to do that on its 40th anniversary.
I'm gonna try and track down a shirt before that. I need a Michael Myers shirt.
I have so many.
I can imagine. I've seen. You wore one for Halloween for H2O, didn't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I have a bunch. Yeah, that I have a Lost Boys shirt. And,
that's awesome.
I don't have any Nightmare on Elm Street shirts, so I have that Halloween shirt that has like the VHS copies, the one I was wearing for H2O. Yeah. I have another one like that for Friday the 13th, but I don't have. They have a Nightmare on Elm Street one, but I can't find it anywhere. I saw someone on one of these like horror documentaries wearing it, and I wanted to be like, how do I find that dude? That's him where he got the shirt from.
Right. Oh, you know what? I bet Amazon would have something like that. But in any case, my horror movie iconography will be increased this year. Definitely gonna try and track down some merch.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, the last thing we have to do is quickly. We covered box office already, but we got Denzel coming back to movie theater screens this weekend for The Equalizer 3. Trailer's pretty decent. Is watching him, do his thing.
Gas, looks like and like a better version of Taken.
It looks like not much different from the other two, which is fine. This also has apparently, because according to like most website traffic, this story like broke a lot of people view the story. I know that people were so anxious to see him share the screen with Dakota Fanning again.
Okay.
after Man on Fire.
I did see some comparison shots, of them aging throughout the years.
But a lot, if you see Man on Fire, that she was really young then, but she was doing her best to act some circles around Denzel Washington, and he at the time when they did that movie said that this is a 40-year-old in a little girl's body, like she is well beyond her years, like.
Okay.
I wish I was that talented when I was that young. And I guess Antoine Fuqua was like, when they were talking about who could play this role in this one, they're like, well, what do you think she's doing? It's been around since you guys shared the screen. And he was like, all right, if she's interested. And she was.
Fantastic.
Happy she got to act with him as a child and then as an adult where she can like fully remember and like take in the experience of working with him. So I thought that was like actually really cool.
Treat that would be working with Denzel Washington. He's one of the greats.
Yeah. The Equalizer became a franchise kind of out of nowhere. It is based on an old TV show from the 80s. Oddly enough, there is the Equalizer TV show with Queen Latifah on CBS. So this brand is like
what?
this brand is like just
doing
really well. The first, I know, right? It comes out of nowhere. The first movie, had a. Let me see if I can find it. A $34.1 million opening weekend. It ended up making $192.3 million worldwide. The sequel, I think, is not too far from it, which is probably why we got this third movie.
Yeah.
The Equalizer 2, it ends up making $190.4 million worldwide, so about $2 million less than the first one globally. But it ended up opening to 35.8 million, so around in the same range. It seemed like it's just
even a little bit more. Right on.
A little bit more. This one's tracking for a 30 million 4-day weekend because they're counting the Monday for Labor Day, the holiday.
Okay.
I feel like it seems like that mid 30 range is a sweet spot.
Yeah, 34 and then 35.
Okay. Do we think it like etches up a little bit? Like, trying to figure out if I should give it like a tad bit higher.
I guess you got to consider the 4-day. I like 35. That's probably what I'll go with for this one because like I feel like this. I don't know like how much hype there is around this movie, and especially this time of the year. Did the other ones? Do you have any idea if they came out around this time or were they summer releases? Let's
see if I can find it. So I know that the first one definitely came out around September. So around this. Yeah. Okay, so actually the sequel came out in July, so it was a summer release. The first one was a September release.
I feel like it won't do worse, but I'm not sure that like I feel like the hype is really there. I think it'll probably maintain that last opening like for the second one. So I'm gonna meet at the last one and go 35. Which is above tracking though. So
yeah, I'm seeing it tomorrow. I think the embargo lifts on Wednesday.
Okay.
Which is kind of a good time for it to lift. It makes it seem like they're a little confident in it.
Right.
I'm gonna go 36, just like a little bit.
Okay.
Higher. 36.
Yeah, you're gonna. What is it? What's the game show? Where is it Jeopardy?
Oh, the Price is Right.
The Price is Right. Yes, the Price is Right. Me. Oh my God! R.I.P. to Bob Barker too. On that note.
Oh yeah, God,
yes,
that was like
99.
99 years old. Yeah.
I honestly thought he was already dead. So
yeah, I saw a few like that too, and I felt really bad because I kind of thought he was as well. Oops.
Just hadn't heard of him in forever. So
there's a really funny Family Guy joke where like it's like
God.
that woman. Actually, there's like a lady on they're doing a Price is Right, and one guy says a price, and then she goes like, what I did to you, like slightly above. Yeah, and he just looks at her and goes like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, dude, Family Guy is so god tier. They just hit every joke on the head.
It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our predictions, folks. I still think good. I mean, September is a really slow month for movies, so whatever can do well right now,
all the power to it.
We'll take it. And of course, they don't have the benefit of Denzel or Dakota Fanning or any of these people being out to promote it.
That's a good
point. So even if it does open in that range or even a little lower, that could be considered a win just for the brand. And this is the last one. They said that they're not going to make any more. This is like being marketed as the final film of the trilogy.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I think so too. Trilogies were still a thing. Way back in the old days, like
back in the day,
feel like we get those anymore. And if if movies are successful in any regard,
they tell you it's the last one, and then 10 years later, they're like, "Well, we thought there was more story here."
Yeah, sure, but hopefully, I'd like to see this movie do well and just maybe bring back the trend of not having to oversaturate a franchise. Yeah. So, all the power to Equalizer 3, though. You have to let me know what you think about it. Excited to hear your thoughts. And by this time next week, I guess you can share those. But with all that being said, unless there's anything else, that should wrap up episode 118 of Back to the Blockbuster. Gaius, real quick, just wanted to say thanks. This is a great episode. I'm glad we were able to watch this together and that you'd selected this one. It's been a blast covering Freddy versus Jason.
So much fun.
Anybody hadn't seen it, I guess, does it get the stamp of approval? I mean, I would say recommend it to horror fans if nobody else.
Oh, for sure. I would recommend it. I would recommend it to horror fans of both franchises. More so if you're really a fan of the later entries, because I think it plays into that silliness a bit more. And just shut your brain off and enjoy it. It is what it is.
Exactly what this movie needs to really enjoy. Don't necessarily go at it with a critical lens.
Don't overthink it, guys.
Exactly. But yes, guys, I guess this not our official kickoff to spooky season, although it feels like a pseudo intro to that. But by this time next week, we'll begin spooky season here back at the Blockbuster, and stay tuned as we will have a pretty huge plan for all the stuff that we plan on covering over the next 60 days or so. But thanks again for joining us, guys. Thanks for giving us some love across our various platforms where you can find us. I know that people have been very supportive of Playlist's new app that's been pretty popular over on the iOS App Store. So for those of you that have some friends that are big into podcasts that haven't checked it out yet, please refer them over there. That's been awesome. And of course, wherever you guys find Back to the Blockbuster, thanks for supporting us there. Stay tuned to our socials. We've got a busy couple months, so we'll be very active on there for you guys to engage and let us know what you want us to cover. And it's been a slice, both physically and literally. We will see you guys for episode 119 next week. Thanks a lot, Gaius.
Yeah, always a pleasure, my friend.
Yep. Peace. Take care, guys.